What if the greatest discoveries in history are not the things archaeologists have found, but the questions they still cannot answer? Every year, new ruins emerge from beneath forests, deserts, mountains, and even modern cities. At first, each discovery seems like another missing piece of the puzzle. But something unexpected often happens. Instead of making the past clearer, the puzzle becomes larger. A forgotten city reveals an unknown civilization. A buried monument raises questions about lost engineering knowledge. The hidden chamber suggests that a famous site was only partially understood. The deeper humanity digs into its past, the more mysteries seem to rise to the surface. Because ancient ruins are not just remnants of history, they are clues left behind by people who can no longer explain themselves. And thousands of years later, we are still trying to finish a story that was never fully told. Oppidum of Manching once stood beside the Danube River in southern Germany as one of the largest Celtic cities ever discovered. More than 2,000 years ago, this settlement covered nearly 380 hectares and was protected by over 7 kilometers of massive defensive walls. But the deeper archaeologists dug into Manching, the stranger it became. Beneath what was once dismissed as a barbarian Celtic settlement, researchers uncovered evidence of industrial-scale production, advanced metallurgy, standardized currency systems, and engineering methods that still raise uncomfortable questions today. The site was first identified in the 19th century, but large-scale excavations accelerated after World War II, when aerial photography revealed enormous geometric outlines hidden beneath farmland. Later magnetometer surveys exposed roads, workshops, fortifications, and dense urban planning buried underground. What emerged was not a primitive tribal camp, but something closer to a proto-industrial city centuries before much of Northern Europe was expected to reach that level of organization. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding Manching is the sheer scale of its engineering. The city's fortification system used a construction style known as Pfostenschlitzmauer, a hybrid wall made from timber, stone, and packed earth. At first glance, it resembled other Celtic defences, but structural analysis revealed something unusual. The wooden beams were not randomly placed. They acted as flexible internal supports capable of absorbing and redistributing force across the wall. Modern engineers comparing reconstructed sections discovered that the design reduced localized collapse during heavy impacts. In some ways, it behaved more like a shock distribution system than a conventional ancient wall. The numbers alone are staggering. Archaeologists estimate that building the walls required tens of thousands of trees and enormous quantities of stone transported across considerable distances. Some sections may have reached heights of 6 to 8 meters. Coordinating labor on that scale implies centralized planning and logistical control far beyond what historians once believed Iron Age Celtic societies possessed. Even stranger is how suddenly these techniques appeared. In many ancient civilizations, engineering methods evolved gradually through visible stages of experimentation. At Manching, highly sophisticated construction methods seem to emerge almost fully developed. Researchers still debate where this knowledge came from and how it spread so rapidly across Celtic Europe. But the walls are only the beginning. Excavations reveal that Manching functioned as an enormous industrial centre. Entire districts were dedicated to specialised production. Archaeologists uncovered large-scale iron workshops, glass-making facilities, pottery kilns, bronze foundries, and goldsmithing areas. The organisation resembles later Roman manufacturing zones more than scattered tribal craftsmanship. Scientific analysis of slag deposits suggests that iron production operated continuously for long periods. Some furnaces reached temperatures exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius, requiring advanced airflow control and fuel management. Maintaining those temperatures consistently without modern bellows technology would have demanded highly refined metallurgical knowledge. The glass industry raises even more questions. Chemical analysis of excavated glass beads and vessels found mineral compositions originating hundreds of kilometers away. Some materials likely came from Mediterranean trade networks. This means Manching was connected to long-distance commercial systems stretching across Europe, centuries before the Roman Empire fully dominated the region. Then comes the most controversial mystery of all. Among the most astonishing discoveries at Manching were thousands of Celtic coins made from gold, silver and bronze. At first, archaeologists assumed they would show the irregularity typical of many ancient tribal currencies. Instead, researchers found something deeply unexpected: remarkable standardization. Many coins possessed nearly identical weights, dimensions, and metal compositions. In several excavated batches, variations were so small that some modern experts compared them to controlled minting systems used by far later centralized states. This creates a major historical problem. To achieve consistency at that level, the people of Manching needed precise control over smelting, temperatures, alloy ratios, and casting procedures. Gold content in certain coin groups remains astonishingly stable despite being produced over long periods. Some metallurgical studies indicate deviations of less than a few percentage points between individual samples. That level of precision should not have been easy in Iron Age Europe. Researchers studying microscopic crystal structures inside the coins discovered evidence of carefully managed cooling processes. Certain specimens display uniform grain formations associated with controlled thermal treatment, rather than random open-fire casting. In simple terms, the metalworkers of Manching may have understood practical heat engineering at a level historians never expected from Celtic societies. Even more mysterious are traces of surface treatments found on several coins and ceremonial objects. Some pieces appear to have undergone deliberate chemical finishing techniques that improved shine and corrosion resistance. The exact methods remain debated. Replication experiments using historically plausible tools often fail to reproduce the same consistency. The city also contained evidence of centralized mint production. Coin blanks, molds, partially finished pieces, and metallurgical waste were discovered concentrated in specific workshop zones. This suggests controlled production rather than scattered local minting. Comparisons with other ancient societies make the mystery even deeper. During roughly the same period, many regions outside the Mediterranean still relied heavily on barter economies or inconsistent local currencies. Yet Manching operated what appears to have been a standardized monetary economy integrated with continental trade routes. Some archaeologists argue that the city functioned as one of the economic hubs of Iron Age Europe. The scale of metalworking itself is difficult to explain. Excavations uncovered massive quantities of iron tools, weapons, agricultural implements, and industrial debris. Certain iron artifacts demonstrate carbon distribution patterns approaching early steel production. A few blades exhibit hardness levels unexpectedly high for the period, suggesting that Celtic smiths may have unintentionally or intentionally developed advanced carburization techniques. One particularly fascinating mystery involves corrosion resistance. Several iron objects from Manching survived in surprisingly stable condition, despite spending more than 2 millennia underground. Metallurgical analysis suggests some alloys contained unusually balanced phosphorus and carbon ratios, which may have slowed oxidation. Similar phenomena have been observed in rare ancient artifacts such as the Iron Pillar of Delhi, though produced through entirely different traditions. The comparison raises uncomfortable questions about how many ancient metallurgical breakthroughs were lost to history. The urban planning of Manching presents another anomaly. Magnetometer surveys revealed a highly organized road system crossing the settlement in structured alignments. Residential districts, industrial areas, storage facilities, and trade zones appear intentionally separated. Some researchers estimate the population may have reached between 5,000 and 10,000 inhabitants during its peak, making it one of the largest settlements north of the Alps at the time. For decades, mainstream history portrayed pre-Roman Celtic Europe as politically fragmented and technologically inferior to Mediterranean civilizations. Manching severely challenges that image. The settlement possessed large-scale infrastructure, economic specialization, industrial production, and long-distance trade integration that rivaled many contemporary urban centers. Then there is the mystery of the famous golden cult tree. Fragments of delicate gold leaves attached to bronze branches were discovered buried within the settlement. The artifact is so finely crafted that even modern replicas struggle to reproduce its thinness and precision without advanced tools. Scholars believe it may have symbolized sacred cosmological ideas connected to fertility, seasonal cycles, or celestial worship. Yet nobody truly knows. The object appears too sophisticated and symbolically important to be decorative alone. Some researchers suspect it was part of a much larger ceremonial installation now lost forever. What do you think really caused the fall of Oppidum and Manching? Was it simply Rome's expansion? Or did an advanced Celtic civilization lose something far more important? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Buried beneath the hills of northern Greece near the modern village of Vergina, royal tombs of Aigai remained untouched for more than 2,300 years. Then archaeologists opened the chambers and discovered gold, paintings, weapons, and engineering techniques that still do not fully make sense today. The discovery happened in 1977, when Greek archaeologist Manolis Andronikos excavated a massive burial mound believed to hide the ancient Macedonian capital of Aigai. Beneath layers of earth, he uncovered sealed royal tombs that many historians believe belonged to King Philip II, father of Alexander the Great. What shocked researchers was not only the wealth inside, but how perfectly preserved everything remained. Unlike most ancient tombs looted long ago, these chambers appeared almost frozen in time. The deeper scientists studied Aigai, the stranger the sight became. Most ancient Macedonian tombs were destroyed by grave robbers or collapsed from moisture and earthquakes, yet Tomb 2 at Aigai survived in remarkably stable condition for over 2 millennia. The chamber maintained enough environmental stability to preserve organic materials, painted surfaces, and delicate gold artifacts. Researchers discovered that the tomb walls were coated with a highly refined lime-based plaster capable of regulating humidity. Modern analysis suggests the material behaved similarly to breathable mineral coatings used in advanced conservation architecture today. The plaster absorbed excess moisture during humid periods and slowly released it during dry conditions, reducing internal condensation. This is extraordinary because northern Greece experiences major seasonal humidity swings. Temperatures can range from below freezing in winter to over 35 degrees C in summer. Under those conditions, most sealed underground chambers accumulate water damage rapidly. Yet the paintings and burial goods inside Aigai remained unusually intact. Some engineers compare this environmental control system to the microclimate preservation seen inside certain Egyptian tombs, but Egypt relied heavily on desert dryness. Aigai existed in a much wetter environment. That difference makes the Macedonian achievement far harder to explain. The murals inside the tombs became one of the greatest archaeological surprises of the 20th century. Ancient Greek panel paintings are almost completely lost to history, meaning the frescoes at Aigai offered one of the first direct looks at Greek painting techniques described by classical writers. One hunting scene stretched across the tomb facade with astonishing detail and movement. The pigments retained reds, blacks, blues, and ochre tones, despite more than 2,300 years underground. Scientific studies identified minerals such as cinnabar, hematite, Egyptian blue, and carbon black. But the true mystery lies in the preservation layer. Microscopic analysis revealed evidence of an ultra-thin protective coating applied over parts of the artwork. Some researchers believe Macedonian artists used a mineral organic sealant capable of slowing oxidation and stabilizing pigments. The formula remains uncertain because surviving traces are extremely degraded. Compared to Roman wall paintings at Pompeii Archaeological Park, the Aigai paintings display more advanced anatomical motion and perspective despite being centuries older. Some art historians argue these murals prove that Greek painters had already mastered techniques that Europe would not fully rediscover until the Renaissance. The greatest mystery inside Aigai was the gold larnax, a ceremonial coffin crafted from nearly pure gold and decorated with a 16-rayed vagina sun symbol. At first glance, the object appears impossibly precise for a 4th century BCE workshop. The coffin weighs roughly 11 kilograms and was hammered into shape using thin sheets of high-purity gold. Modern metallurgical analysis showed that many sections maintain nearly uniform thickness, despite being manually formed. Even more astonishing are the microscopic engraved patterns surrounding the solar emblem. The symmetry is so exact that some experts initially assumed rotational measuring tools must have been used. Ancient Macedonian craftsmen were not supposed to possess that level of metallurgical consistency. To create a structure this delicate without cracking the metal, artisans would have needed extraordinary temperature control during repeated heating and hammering cycles. Gold becomes brittle if improperly cooled, especially when worked into thin, ceremonial panels. Yet the Aigai larnax shows almost no major stress fractures. Researchers believe the craftsmen likely used advanced annealing techniques, carefully reheating the metal between shaping stages to maintain flexibility. The problem is that maintaining stable furnace temperatures above 600 degC with ancient charcoal systems should have been extremely difficult. Some experimental archaeologists attempted to reproduce the coffin using reconstructed ancient tools. Many replicas developed warping, uneven compression, or fracture marks absent from the original artifact. Even the decorative rosettes remain controversial. Certain engraved sections contain line precision measured in fractions of a millimeter. Under magnification, some cuts appear astonishingly clean for hand-driven bronze or iron tools. Historians debate whether unknown polishing compounds or ultrafine abrasive sands were involved. The mystery becomes even deeper when compared to Persian and Egyptian royal goldwork of the same era. While those civilizations produced magnificent jewelry, the Aigai coffin demonstrates an unusual balance between structural geometry and artistic precision. It feels less like jewelry and more like engineered ceremonial architecture. No surviving Macedonian text explains how such objects were manufactured. The tombs themselves also display engineering knowledge far beyond what many historians expected from the Macedonian kingdom. The vaulted chambers distribute weight using carefully angled stone blocks that redirect pressure away from the central roof span. Some structural engineers comparing the tomb to later Roman vaulting systems noted that the Macedonians appear to have understood load transfer surprisingly well. Massive limestone blocks were fitted together with minimal gaps. Even after centuries of seismic activity in the Balkans, large sections remained stable. Laser scans revealed deviations in stone alignment smaller than a few millimeters in some areas. One theory suggests builders intentionally designed slight inward inclines within the chamber walls to resist lateral earth pressure from the burial mound above. Similar stabilization principles are used in modern retaining structures. This matters because the tombs were buried beneath thousands of tons of compacted earth. A failure in weight distribution would have collapsed the chambers long ago. Some archaeologists suspect the tomb entrances were aligned with seasonal sunlight patterns tied to royal burial rituals. Computer simulations suggest sunlight may once have entered the tomb corridor at specific solar angles during certain times of year, briefly illuminating the burial chamber interior. If accurate, the builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of solar movement. This type of astronomical alignment is often associated with monuments like Stonehenge or Newgrange, but Aigai is different because the chambers were hidden beneath artificial burial mounds, making light control dramatically more difficult. The possibility that Macedonian architects intentionally integrated symbolic solar illumination into underground royal tombs remains one of the site's most debated mysteries. Even today, scholars still argue about who was truly buried inside Tomb 2. Most evidence points toward Philip II. Ancient records describe the king suffering a leg injury and eye trauma during battle, and skeletal analysis revealed injuries consistent with those accounts. But some researchers argue the remains could belong to Philip III Aridaeus instead. Radiocarbon analysis, cremation studies, and forensic reconstruction have produced conflicting interpretations. If the tomb belongs to a different ruler, historians may need to rethink large portions of Macedonian royal burial chronology. That uncertainty transforms Aigai from a solved archaeological discovery into an active historical mystery. Do you think the tomb truly belonged to Philip II? Or could history have identified the wrong king for centuries? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Central Germany contains one of the strangest Celtic sites ever discovered. Beneath the grassy earthworks of Glauberg lies a place where Iron Age engineering, astronomical alignment, elite burials, and stone carving technology appear far more advanced than historians once believed possible. The site was rediscovered through aerial photography and later geophysical scans during the late 20th century. What initially looked like ordinary farmland revealed enormous circular ditches, buried walls, processional pathways, and massive tomb structures hidden beneath the soil for more than 20,400 years. Archaeologists soon realized Glauberg was not simply a burial mound. It was an enormous ceremonial and political complex, built with mathematical precision during the 5th century BCE. But the greatest mystery at Glauberg emerged in 1996. Inside one of the burial mounds, archaeologists uncovered the grave of an elite Celtic ruler now known as the Prince of Glauberg. The burial contained weapons, jewelry, imported goods, and one of the most extraordinary discoveries ever made in Celtic archaeology. A life-size sandstone statue standing nearly 1.9 meters tall. The statue immediately shocked researchers because nothing like it was supposed to exist in the Celtic world of that period. Unlike the rough symbolic carvings associated with many Iron Age cultures, the Prince of Glauberg displayed astonishing technical sophistication. The proportions of the body were balanced with unusual precision. The curvature of the torque necklace showed nearly symmetrical shaping. The facial structure, armor details, and famous leaf-shaped headdress demonstrated advanced stoneworking methods that many experts believed Celtic artisans had not yet mastered. Microscopic analysis later revealed evidence of controlled chiseling techniques using multiple grades of iron tools. Certain grooves appear to have been polished repeatedly with abrasive materials, possibly quartz-rich sand or fine mineral powders. Experimental archaeologists attempting to recreate the carving found that producing similar surface smoothness with Iron Age tools would require extraordinary craftsmanship and patience. The headdress itself remains one of the greatest mysteries. The strange curved projections resemble mistletoe leaves or lunar horns, but no definitive explanation exists. Some researchers believe it symbolized royal authority linked to celestial cycles. Others think it may represent ritual attire used in seasonal ceremonies. The precision of the carving suggests the sculptor was following a standardized symbolic system rather than improvising decorative art. Even more puzzling is the Mediterranean influence visible in the statue. Several anatomical proportions resemble sculptural conventions seen in Greek Kouros statues from roughly the same era. Imported artifacts found inside the tomb, including Mediterranean drinking vessels, prove long-distance trade connections existed between Celtic elites and southern Europe. This has led some historians to propose that Glauberg may have been part of a much larger exchange network connecting Celtic Europe to Greek and Etruscan civilizations. If true, then the traditional image of isolated barbarian tribes collapses completely. One of the first mysteries surrounding Glauberg is its scale. The fortified hilltop enclosure stretches across nearly 20 hectares, protected by earthworks and wooden defensive walls that would have required tens of thousands of labor hours to construct. Soil analysis revealed carefully layered engineering techniques involving compacted clay, gravel, and timber reinforcements designed to prevent erosion. Even after more than 2 millennia of rain, frost, and agricultural activity, large sections remain intact. This immediately created a problem for historians. Celtic societies of this period were traditionally portrayed as loosely organized tribal cultures lacking centralized engineering systems. Yet Glauberg suggests the opposite. The coordination required to reshape entire hillsides, transport timber, excavate deep ditches, and maintain geometric layouts indicates an advanced political structure capable of organizing hundreds, possibly thousands of workers. What makes the site even stranger is its apparent astronomical alignment. Archaeological surveys found that several ditches and processional avenues appear oriented toward the winter solstice sunrise. Similar alignments are seen at places like Stonehenge and Newgrange. But Glauberg dates to a later Iron Age Celtic culture, not usually associated with monumental sky-based architecture. Researchers discovered that one major avenue leading toward the burial mound deviates only slightly from the solar rising point during the winter solstice at that latitude. Such precision would require long-term astronomical observation across generations. The question is how Iron Age builders achieved this accuracy without advanced optical tools. Some archaeologists believe they used shadow tracking systems involving wooden poles and seasonal horizon markers. Others argue the alignments may have held symbolic rather than scientific meaning. Either way, the geometry was intentional. The prince's tomb also contained gold ornaments manufactured with remarkable metallurgical precision. Spectroscopic studies on the Torcan jewellery revealed highly controlled alloy compositions with surprisingly low impurity levels. The twisted gold neck rings display almost perfectly consistent rotational symmetry, suggesting skilled temperature management during metalworking. Some metallurgists compared the uniformity to techniques used centuries later by Roman craftsmen. Another unexplained feature is the burial mound itself. Ground-penetrating radar showed the mound was constructed in multiple engineered phases. Builders layered clay, stones, organic material, and compacted soil in ways that distributed weight evenly across the structure. Modern geoarchaeologists noted similarities between the mound stabilization techniques and later Roman embankment engineering. Yet Glauberg predates major Roman expansion into the region by several centuries. Excavations around the mound also uncovered enormous wooden post alignments extending hundreds of meters across the landscape. These timber avenues may have functioned as ceremonial corridors or astronomical sightlines. Some post holes were over 1 meter wide, indicating the use of massive tree trunks likely transported from distant forests. The logistics behind this operation remain difficult to explain. Cutting, transporting, shaping, and erecting such timber structures without advanced machinery would require sophisticated planning and workforce coordination. Some estimates suggest hundreds of people may have participated in construction projects lasting decades. There is also evidence that Glauberg functioned as both a ritual center and a political stronghold. Archaeologists discovered imported luxury goods, high-status weaponry, feasting equipment, and elite burial practices concentrated around the central mound. This indicates the site may have served as the residence of a regional ruler controlling trade routes through Central Europe. Its strategic position supports this theory. Glauberg overlooked important movement corridors connecting northern and southern Europe. Control of these routes would have provided access to metals, salt, amber, wine, and Mediterranean imports. But perhaps the most disturbing mystery is how completely the site vanished from memory. Unlike Roman settlements, Glauberg left behind no written records explaining its builders, rulers, rituals, or collapse. By the time later civilizations expanded across the region, the ceremonial complex had already faded into silence beneath the earth. No surviving Celtic text describes the prince, the mound, or the enormous astronomical earthwork surrounding it. For centuries, the landscape appeared ordinary. Only modern remote sensing technologies exposed the hidden geometry buried below the fields. Magnetometry surveys revealed invisible ditches. LiDAR scans uncovered ancient alignments impossible to detect from ground level. What seemed like natural hills turned out to be engineered monuments, created with deliberate mathematical planning. Do you think the people of Glauberg possessed knowledge far beyond what historians expected from the Iron Age? Or are we only beginning to understand how advanced the ancient Celtic world truly was? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In the valley of northeastern Peloponnese, Greece, hidden between mountains and dry riverbeds, Sanctuary of Zeus at Nemea once hosted one of the most important athletic festivals in the ancient world. Yet beneath its ruined columns and silent stadium lies a mystery far stranger than mythology. Some of its engineering principles appear so advanced that parts of the site still function after more than 20,000 through to 100 years. The sanctuary was first systematically excavated in the late 19th century, but the most important discoveries came during major archaeological campaigns led by the University of California in the 1970s and 1980s under archaeologist Stephen G. Miller. What researchers uncovered was not just a religious complex, it was an ancient laboratory of acoustics, geometry, hydrology, and seismic engineering. The Stadium of Nemea was constructed around the 4th century BCE and could hold roughly 40,000 spectators. At first glance, it looks simple compared to Roman arenas, but beneath the track, archaeologists discovered an unusually sophisticated layered foundation system. The running surface was made from tightly compacted clay mixed with fine gravel and drainage layers beneath it. Modern soil analysis revealed that these layers distributed pressure extremely efficiently, reducing surface deformation caused by repeated impact. In simple terms, the ground behaved almost like a primitive athletic shock absorption system. This becomes even more mysterious when compared to many later Roman stadiums, whose tracks often suffered heavier erosion. Despite earthquakes, seasonal flooding, and more than 2 millennia of exposure, large portions of Nemea's track profile remain recognizable today. Some engineers comparing ancient sports surfaces estimate that the compression consistency of the Nemea track falls surprisingly close to the density management principles used in modern athletic field construction. Yet the Greeks achieved this without modern surveying equipment, industrial compactors, or geotechnical science. One of the most haunting structures at Nemea is the vaulted athlete tunnel leading directly into the stadium. The passage stretches approximately 36 meters and was built from enormous limestone blocks fitted together with remarkable precision. Inside the tunnel, sound behaves strangely. Even a whisper can echo sharply through the corridor and footsteps amplify unnaturally. Researchers studying the acoustics found that the curved stone geometry creates focused reverberation patterns similar to intentional resonance chambers. This raises a disturbing possibility. The tunnel may have been deliberately engineered to psychologically affect athletes before competition. Modern stadium architects understand how enclosed corridors can increase anticipation and emotional intensity through acoustics. But Nemea's tunnel predates most known advanced architectural acoustic theory by centuries. The effect becomes even more intriguing when compared with Greek theatres like Epidaurus. famous for near-perfect sound transmission. Some historians now believe ancient Greek builders possessed a practical understanding of resonance and wave reflection far beyond what was once assumed. The Temple of Zeus at Nemea originally stood with more than 30 massive Doric columns reaching nearly 10 meters high. Many ancient temples collapsed completely over time, especially in seismically active Greece. Yet parts of Nemea survived unusually well. The secret may lie inside the columns themselves. Each column was constructed from stacked cylindrical stone drums. Between those drums, archaeologists found metal clamps and thin lead sheets acting as flexible connectors. Instead of rigidly locking the stones together, the system allowed slight movement during seismic activity. Modern earthquake-resistant structures often use similar concepts through base isolation and controlled flexibility. The principle is simple. A structure that moves slightly during an earthquake survives better than one that resists movement completely. What shocks researchers is the sophistication of this understanding. Ancient Greek builders had no seismographs, structural simulations, or modern physics. Yet they appear to have developed empirical anti-seismic engineering through observation and experimentation. Some structural engineers studying Greek temples estimate that these flexible stone systems could dissipate small seismic vibrations surprisingly effectively compared to rigid masonry designs. Nemea sits in a region vulnerable to seasonal water flow and erosion. A poorly designed sanctuary would have been destroyed long ago. Instead, archaeologists uncovered an elaborate drainage network beneath key sections of the complex. Stone-lined channels directed rainwater away from foundations using carefully calculated slopes. Some underground conduits remain partially operational even today. This may sound ordinary until the mathematics are considered. Maintaining stable water flow across a large sanctuary requires accurate gradient control. Even a slight miscalculation causes stagnation, overflow, or erosion. Modern engineers achieve this with laser surveying and precision instruments. At Nemea, ancient builders accomplished it using basic measuring tools and geometry alone. Comparisons with other ancient hydraulic systems, including Roman aqueducts and Persian qanats, suggest the Greeks possessed an extremely advanced practical understanding of terrain mapping. The drainage gradients at parts of Nemea vary by only tiny margins over long distances, an astonishing feat for the 4th century BCE. Among all the mysteries of Nemea, none may be more unsettling than its geometric precision. Researchers studying the sanctuary noticed recurring mathematical proportions throughout the site. Distances between columns, widths of pathways, dimensions of ceremonial spaces, and alignments within the stadium appear to follow consistent harmonic relationships. Some scholars believe the builders used proportional systems related to Greek musical harmony, mathematical ratios associated with sound frequencies and balance. The idea sounds abstract until the numbers are examined. Ancient Greek mathematicians discovered that harmonious musical intervals emerge from simple numerical ratios such as 2:1, 3:2, and 4:3. At Nemea, several architectural dimensions appear to approximate these same proportional relationships. This creates a disturbing theory. The sanctuary may not have been designed purely for aesthetics. It may have been engineered according to a broader philosophy connecting mathematics, acoustics, human perception, and sacred space. The precision becomes even stranger when compared with other Greek sites like the Parthenon or Olympia. Researchers have long debated whether Greek architects intentionally embedded mathematical harmony into their structures or whether modern scholars are simply finding patterns where none exist. But at Nemea, the consistency is difficult to dismiss. Some measurements align with ratios accurate to within surprisingly small tolerances considering the technological limitations of the time. Without laser tools, digital calculations, or modern drafting systems, ancient builders somehow maintained proportional coherence across an entire sanctuary complex. This has led certain historians to propose that Greek sanctuaries functioned almost like experimental architectural centres where geometry, engineering and religious symbolism merged into a single design philosophy. If true, Nemea was not merely a sports complex. It was a mathematical machine built from stone. Inside the athlete tunnel, archaeologists discovered hundreds of ancient inscriptions carved directly into the limestone walls. Some are simple names, likely athletes preparing for competition. Others are symbols and markings whose meanings remain uncertain. Several symbols repeat in patterns that do not resemble ordinary graffiti. Some researchers speculate they may have represented team identifiers, ritual symbols, or coded markings connected to initiation ceremonies. The existence of these carvings changes how historians view the Nemean Games. The competitions may not have been purely athletic events. Like many Greek festivals, they were deeply intertwined with religion, ritual purification, and symbolic performance. In that sense, the tunnel itself may have acted as a transitional chamber, psychologically transforming competitors before they entered the sacred arena. What do you think really caused the fall of Nemea? War, environmental collapse, or the loss of knowledge itself? Let us know your theory in the comments below. The dry highlands of central Spain, about 140 kilometers southeast of Madrid, still hide the ruins of Segobriga beneath an unforgiving sun. At first glance, it looks like another abandoned Roman city, but beneath the stone streets lies one of the strangest engineering mysteries of the ancient world. A city that became rich not from rivers, ports, or fertile land, but from underground stone-glass mines so advanced that some archaeologists compare them to early industrial-era mining systems. Although local villagers had known about scattered ruins for centuries, the true scale of Segobriga was only understood after systematic excavations began in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Archaeologists uncovered a Roman theatre, amphitheatre, baths, aqueduct systems, elite villas, and most importantly, an enormous network of underground mines surrounding the city. The discoveries revealed that Segobriga was not a remote provincial settlement. During the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, it was one of the wealthiest mining centres in Roman Hispania. But the deeper researchers dug, the stranger the city became. The greatest mystery surrounding Segobriga is its massive extraction system for lapis specularis, a transparent gypsum crystal used by the Romans as window glass before large-scale glass manufacturing became common. Ancient Roman writer Pliny the Elder described the material as one of the most valuable products of Hispania, but modern archaeologists were shocked when they realized the scale of the mining operation around Segobriga. Some tunnels extend for several kilometers underground, others descend more than 80 meters deep into unstable rock formations. What confuses researchers is not simply the size of the mines, but their precision. Many corridors maintain nearly identical widths and angles over long distances, despite being carved entirely by hand nearly 2,000 years ago. The mines also contain evidence of advanced ventilation planning. Narrow vertical shafts appear positioned specifically to circulate air between chambers. Without proper airflow, Roman miners using oil lamps would have quickly suffocated from smoke and oxygen depletion. Modern mining engineers studying the site noted that several tunnel systems unintentionally resemble pressure-balanced ventilation methods later seen in industrial mining centuries afterward. Even more mysterious is the structural stability of the tunnels. Large sections remain intact despite earthquakes, erosion, and nearly 2 millennia of collapse pressure. In some areas, miners left stone support pillars with spacing ratios surprisingly similar to modern load distribution calculations. Archaeologists still debate whether Roman engineers developed empirical geological knowledge far beyond what written history records. Comparisons with other ancient mines make Segobriga even more unusual. Egyptian gold mines were often chaotic and dangerous. Early Greek silver mines at Laurium relied heavily on brute force excavation, but Segobryga's tunnel layouts appear organised, modular, and surprisingly standardised. Some researchers have even compared portions of the site to 18th and 19th century European mining networks because of their systematic design. The value of lapis specularis itself added another layer of mystery. Before clear glass windows became common, wealthy Romans used these translucent sheets in villas, bathhouses, and greenhouses. The mineral allowed sunlight to pass through while blocking wind and rain. Some surviving Roman writings claim the material could be cut into large, thin panels, something extremely difficult even with modern gypsum handling because the crystal fractures easily under uneven stress. Yet Segobryga exported enormous quantities across the Roman Empire. How Roman workers extracted, transported, and polished such fragile material on an industrial scale without widespread breakage remains partly unexplained. Segobryga's second great mystery is water. The city was built in a relatively dry region without a major nearby river, yet archaeological evidence shows it supported public baths, fountains, drainage systems, and elite residential water networks. Roman engineers somehow maintained continuous water pressure across difficult limestone terrain prone to cracking and leakage. Excavations revealed underground channels engineered with incredibly subtle gradients. In some sections, the slope changes only a few centimeters across dozens of meters. That level of hydraulic precision is difficult even with modern surveying tools. Researchers comparing Segobryga's aqueduct systems to those of Pompeii and Tarraco notice something unusual. Segobryga appears to have relied more heavily on pressure control and underground distribution than surface monumental aqueducts. This suggests Roman engineers adapted specifically to the harsh environmental conditions of inland Hispania. Even more impressive was their ability to preserve water quality. Sediment tanks, filtration basins, and layered flow systems helped to reduce contamination. Some hydraulic mortar sections still resist water penetration after nearly 2,000 years. Similar long-lasting Roman concrete technologies have been studied at ports like Caesarea and Ostia, where mineral reactions inside the concrete actually strengthened structures over time. At Segobryga, researchers suspect local volcanic ash substitutes and lime mixtures may have produced unusually durable waterproofing compounds, though the exact composition remains debated. The Roman theatre of Segobryga creates another technological puzzle. Despite the city's modest population, the theatre was built with acoustic performance approaching that of major urban centres in Rome itself. Modern sound tests show voices projected from the stage can still be heard clearly from upper seating areas without amplification. This was not accidental. The curvature of the seating rows, the incline angles, and the reflective stone surfaces appear mathematically optimized for sound propagation. Yet Roman builders had no modern acoustic science, no digital modeling, and no electronic measurement tools. Researchers studying Roman theatres often compare Segobryga to Epidaurus in Greece, famous for its near-perfect acoustics. Both structures use geometry to scatter and reinforce sound waves naturally. In modern physics terms, the theatres manipulate reflection timing and frequency filtering. But ancient builders achieved these effects centuries before wave acoustics became formalized science. Some archaeologists argue Roman architects developed highly advanced practical engineering traditions passed through apprenticeship rather than written theory. Others believe generations of experimentation gradually produced designs so refined they now appear scientifically impossible for their era. Another overlooked mystery is Segobryga's climate engineering. Summer temperatures in central Spain regularly exceed 35 degrees Celsius, yet many Roman structures at the site were designed to remain significantly cooler inside. Excavations revealed carefully positioned courtyards, airflow corridors, shaded stone passages, and thermal mass layouts that reduced interior heat buildup. Certain homes appear aligned specifically to maximize prevailing wind circulation. Thick stone walls absorbed heat during the day and slowly released it at night, stabilizing temperatures naturally. Underground chambers likely acted as primitive cooling zones similar to Persian Qanat-based air systems and later Islamic wind towers. Compared to many medieval European settlements built over 1,000 years later, Segobriga may actually have had superior passive climate adaptation. This raises a larger question. How much environmental engineering knowledge did the Romans truly possess that was later forgotten after the empire collapsed? Do you think Segobriga was simply a forgotten Roman city? Or evidence that ancient engineering knowledge was far more advanced than we've been taught? Let us know your theory in the comments below. Stone palaces, monasteries and churches cling to the steep slopes of Mount Taygetus near Sparta, Greece, after more than 700 years of earthquakes, wars, humidity and abandonment. But the deeper archaeologists studied Mystras, the stranger it became. Some of its engineering systems appear centuries ahead of their time, and some of its materials still behave in ways historians cannot fully explain. Although local populations always knew the ruins existed, systematic archaeological study of Mystras only accelerated during the late 19th and early 20th centuries after Greece gained independence from the Ottoman Empire. Excavations revealed something unexpected. This was not just a medieval fortress. Mystras had once been the final great intellectual and political centre of the Byzantine Empire. At its peak during the 14th and 15th centuries, the city may have held more than 20,000 inhabitants spread vertically across terraces cut directly into unstable mountain terrain. Archaeologists uncovered advanced water systems, earthquake-resistant masonry, hidden cisterns, frescoes with unusual chemical durability, and palace ventilation designs that resemble passive climate control systems used in modern sustainable architecture. The greatest mystery of Mystras may not be its walls or palaces, but its paintings. Inside churches like the Pantanassa Monastery and the Church of Peribleptos, Byzantine frescoes painted between the 13th and 15th centuries still retain remarkable reds, blues, gold tones, and facial detail despite centuries of smoke, candle soot, earthquakes, moisture, fungal growth, and temperature fluctuation. In many sections, the pigments appear dramatically better preserved than frescoes of comparable age elsewhere in Europe. Scientists studying Byzantine wall paintings discovered that many pigments used at Mystras were based on iron oxides, copper minerals, lime compounds, carbon blacks, and naturally stabilized earth pigments. Those materials alone do not fully explain the preservation. The larger mystery lies in the plaster beneath them. Microscopic analysis of Byzantine lime plaster from similar Greek sites has shown extremely dense crystalline bonding caused by slow carbonation processes. In some areas, the plaster behaves almost like a mineral shell, trapping pigments beneath a hardened, breathable surface. Modern conservation experts compare this effect to self-stabilizing mineral coatings used in advanced restoration science today. Even stranger, some fresco layers at Mystras show unusually low salt damage despite the Mediterranean climate. Salt crystallization is one of the primary reasons ancient wall paintings decay. At sites across Italy and the Middle East, salt expansion slowly destroys painted surfaces from inside the wall. Yet several Mystras frescoes survived with minimal structural flaking. One theory suggests Byzantine artisans may have intentionally mixed volcanic ash, ceramic dust, or finely crushed fired clay into the plaster, creating hydraulic reactions similar to Roman pozzolanic concrete. That would allow the walls to regulate moisture more efficiently while resisting cracking. Similar techniques helped Roman harbours survive for nearly 2,000 years underwater. Comparisons with medieval European frescoes are striking. Many 14th century paintings in humid regions of France or England lost large portions of their pigment within only a few centuries. Yet some faces and robes at Mistras remain visible with extraordinary clarity after over 600 years. Researchers also noticed something unusual about the placement of the paintings themselves. Certain church interiors were designed to minimize direct sunlight and stabilize humidity. Narrow windows filtered light in ways that reduced ultraviolet damage while still illuminating key religious imagery. In modern museum preservation, similar principles are deliberately engineered using climate-controlled lighting systems. The mystery deepens because Byzantine technical manuals describing pigment preparation from this period are extremely limited. Much of the practical knowledge may have vanished after the fall of Constantinople in 1453. If master craftsmen at Mystras possess specialized formulas for stabilizing pigments and plaster, those recipes may have disappeared forever. Mystras stands in one of the most seismically active regions in Europe. Southern Greece experiences frequent tectonic activity due to interactions between the African and Eurasian plates. Over centuries, the region endured repeated earthquakes powerful enough to destroy ordinary medieval structures, yet large portions of Mystras survived. Architectural studies found that many buildings used alternating layers of stone and thin brick bands, a Byzantine technique that distributed seismic stress more evenly across walls. Instead of rigidly resisting earthquakes, the structures could absorb and dissipate vibration. Some foundations also incorporated softer mortar zones between heavy stone blocks. Modern earthquake engineering sometimes uses flexible joints and dampening layers for similar reasons. What makes this remarkable is the terrain itself. Mystras was built vertically across steep mountain slopes vulnerable to erosion and landslides. Even modern hillside construction requires deep geological analysis and reinforced retaining systems. Medieval engineers achieved structural stability using little more than stone lime mortar geometry and experience. Comparisons with other medieval cities are revealing. Numerous castles in Western Europe collapsed after centuries of soil movement and seismic activity. Yet sections of Mystras remain standing despite being built on terrain that modern engineers would consider highly unstable. Supplying water to a mountainside city should have been nearly impossible. But Mystras maintained fountains, monasteries, baths, gardens, and residential districts for generations. Archaeologists discovered hidden cisterns, underground channels, terracotta pipelines, and carefully graded water routes carved into the slope itself. The system relied entirely on gravity and pressure balance. Even a small miscalculation in angle could have stopped water flow or caused destructive erosion. Modern hydraulic engineers note that maintaining stable flow across vertically layered settlements without pumps requires extremely precise understanding of gradient control. Some channels were concealed within walls to protect them during sieges. Others distributed overflow water into agricultural terraces below the city, reducing waste while preventing slope instability. Compared to many medieval European cities that struggled with contaminated wells and sewage outbreaks, Mystras appears unusually advanced in water management. The Palace of the Despots contains another mystery rarely discussed outside architectural studies. During summer, some internal chambers remain noticeably cooler than surrounding exterior areas. Researchers believe the palace used a passive thermal regulation system based on airflow, wall thickness, shaded courtyards, and mountain wind circulation. Narrow openings accelerated airflow through pressure differences, while thick masonry slowed heat transfer during the day. This resembles principles used in modern passive cooling architecture and sustainable environmental design. Similar concepts appear in Persian wind catchers and ancient desert cooling towers, but Mystras adapted them to a mountainous Mediterranean environment. The design becomes even more surprising considering the Byzantine Empire was already in political and economic decline during Mystras' golden age. Despite that instability, engineers and architects were still applying highly sophisticated environmental design principles. What do you think is the biggest mystery of Mystras? The earthquake-resistant engineering, the advanced water systems, or the frescoes that somehow refuse to fade for centuries? Let us know in the comments below. Ancient Corinth stood on one of the most strategic locations in the ancient world, a narrow strip of land connecting mainland Greece to the Peloponnese. For over 20,500 years, archaeologists have tried to understand how this city developed engineering systems that, in some cases, appear centuries ahead of their time. Beneath its ruined temples and shattered marketplaces lies evidence of transport technology, hydraulic engineering, military architecture, and industrial organization that still sparks debate among historians today. The modern rediscovery of ancient Corinth began in 1896 when the American School of Classical Studies launched large-scale excavations across the site. What initially appeared to be a typical Greek city soon revealed something far stranger. Massive paved transport systems, precision-cut water tunnels, advanced fortress defences, and sophisticated urban planning emerged from beneath layers of Roman destruction and earthquakes. Every decade of excavation uncovered another puzzle suggesting Corinth was not simply wealthy. It may have been technologically exceptional. The greatest mystery surrounding Corinth is undoubtedly the Diolkos, a stone transport road constructed around the 6th century BCE under the rule of Periander. Stretching roughly 6 to 8.5 kilometers across the Isthmus of Corinth, the system allowed ships to avoid the deadly journey around Cape Malea, one of the most dangerous sea routes in the Mediterranean. At first glance, Diolkos resembles a simple paved road, but closer inspection reveals something astonishing. Parallel grooves carved directly into limestone slabs run consistently across large sections of the route. The grooves average approximately 1.5 meters apart, remarkably close to the width principles later used in rail-guided transport systems. Archaeologists discovered that wheeled platforms carrying ships likely travelled along these carved tracks, guided in a controlled path much like modern train rails. Some historians describe Diolkos as the world's first known proto-railway. The engineering implications are staggering. Ancient engineers had to calculate load distribution for ships weighing potentially 25 to 70 tons. Even moderate-sized Greek triremes could weigh more than 40 tons without crew or cargo. Transporting that mass over uneven terrain without breaking the hull would require advanced understanding of friction, pressure points, and structural reinforcement. The grooves themselves show unusually consistent wear patterns. Certain sections are polished smooth after centuries of repeated transport. Modern engineers studying the site concluded that wooden-wheeled cradles were likely lubricated using animal fat, olive oil, or water to reduce friction. Some calculations suggest several dozen labourers could move ships across the route in a single day, dramatically faster than sailing around southern Greece. What remains unexplained is the precision of the system. The grooves maintain alignment over long distances despite earthquakes and unstable geology. Similar guided transport systems would not appear again in Europe until early industrial mining railways nearly 2,000 years later. Even Roman transport infrastructure rarely demonstrated this level of specialized mechanical planning. Some researchers compare Diolkos to early industrial logistics networks rather than ordinary ancient roads. Corinth may have developed a transport economy operating on principles surprisingly close to mechanized freight movement. Another mystery lies underground. Perrine Fountain was far more than a public fountain. Beneath the visible ruins exists a highly organized hydraulic network involving tunnels, reservoirs, pressure-fed channels, and hidden cisterns carved deep into rock. The city's engineers mastered gravity-fed water transport with extraordinary precision. Several underground channels maintained slope gradients so carefully controlled that water continued flowing steadily without pumps across long distances. Even slight errors in angle could have stopped the system entirely. Archaeologists discovered evidence of waterproof mortars containing volcanic ash and reactive minerals similar to compounds later seen in Roman hydraulic concrete. Laboratory analysis suggests some sections developed chemical resistance to water penetration over time, helping the system survive for centuries. Comparisons with other Greek cities reveal Corinth's infrastructure was unusually advanced. Athens relied heavily on wells and simpler aqueduct systems during certain periods, while Corinth maintained layered water storage systems capable of surviving sieges and droughts. Some tunnels beneath the city remain inaccessible today. Ground-penetrating radar has detected voids and sealed chambers that may belong to undocumented extensions of the hydraulic network. Towering more than 575 meters above the city, Acrocorinth became one of the most impregnable fortresses in the Mediterranean. The engineering challenge alone seems nearly impossible. Massive stone walls were built along steep mountain terrain where transporting multi-ton limestone blocks should have been extraordinarily difficult. Some wall sections follow natural rock contours with astonishing precision, reducing structural weaknesses during earthquakes. Military historians remain fascinated by the fortress gates. Rather than allowing direct entry, the pathways force attackers through angled choke points that expose their unshielded sides. This defensive geometry resembled principles still used in fortified military architecture thousands of years later. But the fortress's greatest mystery may be its hidden water systems. Deep wells and concealed reservoirs ensured defenders could survive long sieges without external supply lines. Several underground passages connected water sources directly to protected sections of the fortress. Ancient writers claimed Acrocorinth was nearly impossible to capture by force. Historical records show multiple armies avoided direct assault entirely because of the fortress's defensive advantages. Temple of Apollo dates back to approximately 560 BCE and remains one of the oldest Doric temples in Greece. Yet its surviving columns raise engineering questions that remain difficult to answer. The temple's monolithic limestone columns were carved with remarkable symmetry despite the absence of steel tools or modern measuring systems. Each column subtly curves outward in the middle, a phenomenon called entasis, designed to correct optical distortion and make the structure appear perfectly straight to the human eye. This required sophisticated understanding of visual perception and geometry. Similar optical correction systems later appeared in structures such as the Parthenon, but Corinth's temple demonstrates that these techniques were already being mastered centuries earlier. Stone-cutting marks indicate highly organized quarrying methods. Some archaeologists estimate the builders achieved tolerances of only a few millimeters in critical sections. Such precision would have required advanced measurement techniques that remain poorly documented in surviving Greek texts. Ancient Corinth was not merely a city. It functioned as a massive commercial machine connecting the eastern and western Mediterranean. Archaeological excavations uncovered enormous quantities of pottery, metalworking remains, imported marble, dyes, and trade goods from across the ancient world. Corinthian pottery became so widespread that fragments have been discovered from Spain to the Black Sea. The scale of production suggests near-industrial organization. Workshops appear to have specialized in standardized manufacturing methods, allowing rapid export across maritime trade routes. Historians sometimes compare Corinth to a physical internet of the ancient Mediterranean. Goods, information, and military resources moved through the city at extraordinary speed for the era. The mystery is how such coordination operated without modern navigation systems, centralized communication, or advanced bureaucracy. Corinth somehow maintained one of the most efficient commercial systems of the ancient world, using technologies historians still only partially understand. Do you think ancient Corinth truly developed technology far ahead of its time, or are we still underestimating what ancient civilizations were capable of? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. More than 130 meters above sea level in the mountains of Arcadia, Greece stands a temple that should not exist. Hidden deep within the rocky wilderness of the Peloponnese, Bassae survived earthquakes, violent weather, isolation, and more than 2,400 years of erosion. Yet the greatest mystery is not its survival. It is the fact that this remote structure appears to contain architectural ideas centuries ahead of its own civilization. The Temple of Apollo Epicurus at Bassae was rediscovered in 1765 by the French architect Joachim Bocher while he was traveling through the mountains. At the time, much of the structure was buried beneath collapsed stone and debris. Early excavations in the 19th century revealed something astonishing. Inside this lonely mountain temple stood what many historians now consider the oldest known Corinthian column ever built. That discovery changed the history of Greek architecture. The single Corinthian column inside Bassae remains one of the most controversial architectural anomalies in the ancient world. Most historians associate Corinthian architecture with the later Hellenistic and Roman eras, especially massive Roman temples built centuries after Bassae. Yet this column was constructed around 420 to 400 BCE, possibly designed by Iktinos, the same architect connected to the Parthenon in Athens. The problem is timing. At Bassae, the Corinthian style appeared nearly 150 years before it became common across the Mediterranean. Its carved acanthus leaves are so symmetrical and geometrically refined that some researchers argue the stoneworkers must have used advanced proportional systems rarely documented in surviving Greek texts. Modern laser analysis of Greek architectural fragments has shown that master builders often achieve tolerances within only a few millimeters, despite working entirely by hand. At Bassae, the precision becomes even more mysterious because the temple stands in an isolated mountain region far from major urban workshops. Some archaeologists compare this leap in architectural experimentation to discovering Renaissance engineering hidden inside a medieval fortress. Even stranger, the Corinthian column was placed inside the temple rather than outside where it could be publicly admired. This suggests the column may have carried ritual or symbolic significance beyond decoration. Some theories propose it represented Apollo himself, acting as a sacred axis between heaven and earth. No written explanation from the builders survives. Bassae sits in one of the most seismically active regions in Greece. The Peloponnese has experienced destructive earthquakes for thousands of years, yet much of the temple remained standing long after many surrounding structures collapsed. Modern structural studies revealed something unusual in the way Bassae was assembled. Unlike rigid stone systems used in many Greek temples, parts of Bassae appear designed to absorb stress rather than resist it directly. Certain stone joints allow microscopic movement during seismic vibrations. This resembles principles found in some modern earthquake-resistant structures. Researchers studying ancient anti-seismic engineering often compare Bassae with later Roman techniques or even Japanese wooden pagodas that survive earthquakes through controlled flexibility. At Bassae, some limestone blocks were connected using iron clamps and carefully calculated spacing that distributed pressure across the structure. The temple's location makes the mystery even greater. Transporting thousands of tons of limestone up steep mountain terrain would already have been an extraordinary logistical achievement. Designing it to survive earthquakes at the same time suggests an engineering awareness far beyond what many historians once assumed about classical Greece. Most Greek temples face east. Bassae does not. Instead, the temple follows an unusual north-south orientation that continues to confuse archaeologists today. This design may have allowed sunlight to enter the temple interior at specific seasonal moments, connected to Apollo, the god of light. Some researchers believe the side doorway of the temple was positioned to channel the first rays of the summer sunrise directly toward the sacred interior chamber. Simulations using astronomical software suggest the lighting effects would have been dramatic, especially during certain days of the year. This has led to comparisons with solar alignments seen in places like Newgrange or Abu Simbel, where ancient builders manipulated sunlight with astonishing precision. But Bassae presents an additional challenge. The temple was built on rugged, mountainous terrain, where horizon lines constantly shift because of surrounding peaks. Achieving accurate solar alignment under those conditions would have required careful long-term observation. Some historians believe the builders may have tracked solar movement across the mountains for years before construction began. The climate around Bassae is brutal. Winters bring freezing temperatures and mountain storms, while summers become dry and intensely hot. Yet evidence suggests the temple may have incorporated passive climate control principles rarely associated with Greek architecture. The arrangement of columns and openings appears to create natural airflow channels through the interior. Wind moving down from the mountains could circulate through the structure, reducing heat buildup during summer months. Modern engineers studying passive cooling systems often compare this concept to Middle Eastern wind towers, developed many centuries later. The orientation of the temple may also have minimized direct sunlight exposure during the hottest parts of the day, while still allowing ritual illumination at carefully chosen moments. Combined with thick limestone walls capable of storing thermal energy, Bassae may have functioned as a naturally regulated environment. This is particularly surprising because surviving Greek texts contain little direct discussion of airflow engineering on this scale. One of the greatest unanswered questions is how Bassae was built at all. The temple stands far from major cities, quarries, and ancient transport routes. Even today, reaching the site requires traveling through winding mountain roads, yet ancient workers somehow transported multi-ton stone blocks, carved architectural elements, and iron reinforcements into this isolated environment over 2,400 years ago. Researchers estimate some blocks weighed several tons each. Without cranes, engines, or modern roads, construction would have required massive coordinated labor forces using ropes, sledges, wooden rollers, and inclined ramps. The problem is geography. The steep slopes around Bassae make large-scale transport operations incredibly difficult. Some historians argue seasonal construction schedules may have been necessary, with materials moved only during certain weather conditions. Others believe the builders developed temporary mountain infrastructure that disappeared long ago. Comparisons are often made with the transportation mysteries surrounding the stones of Stonehenge or the high-altitude construction of Machu Picchu. But Bassae remains unique because it combined remote logistics with extremely refined architectural precision. Excavations at Bassae uncovered one of the most remarkable sculptural friezes in ancient Greece. The marble panels depicted battles between Greeks, Amazons, and centaurs with unusually dynamic movement and emotional intensity. Some art historians argue the Bassae frieze anticipated stylistic developments that became common only generations later. The carvings demonstrated advanced understanding of anatomy, motion, and perspective. Muscles twist naturally, bodies overlap realistically. Faces display emotional variation rarely seen in earlier classical sculpture. Several experts describe the artistic leap at Bassae as strangely isolated, almost as if experimental techniques were tested there before spreading across Greece. Today, many of the original sculptures are housed in the British Museum, where ongoing analysis continues to reveal microscopic traces of pigments once used to colour the stone. That discovery shattered the old belief that Greek temples were entirely white. Do you think the builders of Bassae possessed engineering knowledge far beyond what history officially recognizes? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Southern France once hid an Iron Age fortress between Narbonne and Béziers that, watched over Mediterranean trade routes for more than 20,500 years. But the greatest mystery was never the walls or the weapons, it was water. Around the hill lies one of the strangest hydraulic landscapes in Europe, including the enormous radial drainage system of Montedi, a gigantic wheel carved into the earth so precise that modern engineers still debate how ancient builders calculated it without advanced instruments. The ruins of Unsolved became widely recognized during the 19th century after excavations uncovered houses, storage pits, defensive walls, imported Greek amphorae, and underground cisterns. Archaeologists soon realized the settlement was not an isolated tribal fortress. It was a major urban center occupied from roughly the 6th century BCE to the 1st century CE. Excavations revealed evidence of Mediterranean trade on a surprisingly large scale. Thousands of wine amphora fragments from Greece, Massalia, and later Rome were discovered on the hill. This suggested a wealthy population living in a region with severe seasonal droughts. That contradiction became one of the site's greatest enigmas. How could a dense Iron Age city survive for centuries on a dry limestone plateau with limited natural water? The answer appeared to involve engineering far more advanced than historians once believed possible for Celtic Iberian societies. The most controversial mystery surrounding Unsolved lies only a few kilometers away: the circular drainage system of Montedi. Seen from the air, the landscape resembles a colossal wheel nearly 1.3 kilometers wide. Long radial canals extend outward from a central basin like spokes on a bicycle wheel. Every channel slopes with extraordinary precision toward a drainage tunnel that removes water from the marshland. Most historians officially date the current system to the 13th century. However, many researchers suspect the medieval engineers may have inherited older surveying knowledge connected to the people of Ensarun. The reason is simple: the geometry is astonishingly accurate. To drain marshlands successfully, every canal required a carefully controlled hydraulic gradient. Even a vertical error of only a few centimeters across hundreds of meters could cause standing water, erosion, or catastrophic flooding. Yet the canals maintain remarkable consistency despite being constructed centuries before laser surveying equipment. Modern hydraulic engineers studying similar systems explain that maintaining water flow across flat terrain requires precise gravitational calculations. Ancient builders would have needed methods to measure elevation differences smaller than the width of a human hand over enormous distances. Some theories suggest they used reflective water basins, solar alignments, or primitive leveling instruments based on floating markers. Others believe generations of empirical observation allow them to understand terrain gradients with surprising sophistication. The drainage tunnel itself adds another mystery. Water from the radial channels was directed through a long underground conduit toward lower terrain beyond the hill. Excavations show the tunnel maintained stable flow despite seasonal storms common to Mediterranean climates. Engineers today still use nearly identical principles in agricultural drainage systems. The scale alone is staggering. The circular field covers roughly 420 hectares. For comparison, many Iron Age European settlements occupied less than 20 hectares total. This raises an uncomfortable possibility for historians. Either medieval builders independently rediscovered highly sophisticated hydraulic engineering, or knowledge from much older civilizations survived far longer than previously believed. Another mystery involves the water storage technology inside Unsolved itself. Archaeologists uncovered cisterns coated with an unusually durable waterproof plaster. Some sections remained intact after more than 2 millennia despite heat, erosion, and mineral exposure. Chemical analysis suggests mixtures of lime, crushed ceramics, sand, and volcanic material may have been used. The composition resembles Roman hydraulic concrete, yet several structures at Ensarun appear older than the full Roman occupation of the region. This has led some researchers to wonder whether local Celtic Iberian builders developed independent waterproofing techniques Before Roman engineering became dominant, similar debates surround ancient sites like Fishbourne Roman Palace and certain Iberian settlements where long-lasting mortars seem technologically ahead of their accepted historical timeline. Modern concrete often begins degrading after only 50 to 100 years under severe environmental conditions. Some ancient Mediterranean hydraulic mixtures have survived over 2,000 years. That difference continues to puzzle material scientists. Ennsarun should have been highly vulnerable to erosion. The city sat on steep terrain exposed to Mediterranean winds and seasonal downpours. Yet large portions of its streets and terraces remained stable for centuries. Archaeologists discovered that builders layered crushed stone, gravel, clay, and compacted earth beneath pathways and foundations. This created natural drainage beneath structures, reducing hydrostatic pressure during storms. The principle resembles modern permeable sub-base engineering used beneath roads and retaining walls. Some retaining systems also appear intentionally flexible. Instead of rigid mortar-heavy construction, certain walls used tightly fitted stones with micro-gaps that absorbed stress during ground movement and thermal expansion. This technique resembles polygonal masonry seen in parts of ancient Iberia, Greece, and even certain Andean civilizations. While no direct connection exists between these cultures, the engineering logic is remarkably similar. Structures survive longer when they can move slightly instead of resisting every force rigidly. Southern France regularly experiences summer temperatures above 35 degrees C, yet excavations show many homes at Ennsarun were designed to reduce heat naturally. Walls were unusually thick. Doorways and openings often faced directions that captured cooling sea winds while avoiding the harsh western afternoon sun. Some underground storage chambers maintained relatively stable temperatures year-round. The principles mirror passive cooling systems later perfected in Persian desert architecture, including wind towers and subterranean thermal chambers. Even without electricity, ancient builders clearly understood airflow, shade angles, thermal mass, and evaporative cooling effects. Researchers studying thermal behavior at Mediterranean archaeological sites found that thick stone walls can reduce indoor temperature swings by several degrees Celsius compared to external conditions. In a pre-industrial world, that difference could determine food preservation, comfort, and survival. One of the strangest facts about Ennsarun is its economic scale. Excavations revealed enormous quantities of imported goods, including wine amphorae from Greek and Roman merchants. This indicates sustained long-distance trade across the Mediterranean, yet maintaining a large population on a dry hilltop would have required stable food supplies, water storage, and transportation systems. Some archaeologists estimate the settlement may have housed several thousand inhabitants during its peak. That would place enormous pressure on local resources. Without advanced water management, the city should have failed quickly during drought periods. Instead, it survived for centuries. The possibility that hidden cisterns, buried canals, or lost underground conduits still exist beneath the hill remains a serious archaeological question. Ground-penetrating radar surveys in parts of southern France continue revealing buried structures invisible from the surface. Some researchers believe Ennsarun may still conceal major hydraulic components beneath layers of sediment and collapsed architecture. Do you think the builders of Ennsarun discovered these engineering techniques on their own? Or were they inheriting knowledge from a much older lost civilization? Let me know your theory in the comments below. Forgotten ruins on the southern coast of Sardinia, Italy, still lie half submerged beneath the Mediterranean. Nora was discovered again through scattered Roman ruins, underwater stone structures, and ancient roads buried under layers of sand and salt. But the deeper archaeologists excavated, the stranger the sight became. Massive harbour blocks placed with impossible precision. Water systems engineered with near-modern accuracy. Acoustic structures that still amplify sound after 2,000 years. And most mysterious of all, Mosaics whose colours have survived sea salt, storms, humidity, and time itself almost untouched. The rediscovery of Nora began seriously in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when archaeologists uncovered Roman baths, temples, villas and theatres near the coastline of Sardinia. Later underwater surveys revealed something even more unusual. Parts of the ancient city extended beneath the sea. Sonar mapping and marine archaeology identified submerged walls, harbour installations, and stone alignments several metres below modern sea level. This suggested that parts of Nora either sank gradually due to tectonic activity or were swallowed as Mediterranean sea levels rose after antiquity. But the engineering mysteries surrounding Nora quickly became more important than the city itself. One of the biggest puzzles is the harbour system. Nora was originally founded by the Phoenicians around the 8th century BCE, long before Roman concrete technology reached its peak. Yet underwater investigations show carefully organised maritime structures designed to survive powerful coastal currents. Some submerged stone blocks weigh several tons and appear positioned with remarkable geometric precision. Even modern marine engineers studying ancient Mediterranean ports compare Nora's submerged foundations to later Roman harbour systems at Caesarea Maritima or Portus near Rome. The problem is timing. The Phoenicians were extraordinary sailors, but the exact techniques used to stabilize large underwater harbour structures over 2,500 years ago remain uncertain. Researchers believe interlocking stone foundations may have been used to dissipate wave energy, functioning similarly to modern breakwater engineering. Some blocks appear cut with unusually flat contact surfaces that reduced movement from tidal pressure. Without hydraulic cranes, diesel lifting systems, or modern diving technology, transporting and positioning these stones in moving seawater would have required astonishing coordination. The roads and drainage systems of Nora create another mystery. Most ancient coastal cities suffer catastrophic erosion over centuries because saltwater destroys mortar and weakens stone foundations. Yet many roads at Nora remained stable for nearly 2 millennia, despite continuous Mediterranean humidity and salt exposure. Geological studies of construction materials found mixtures of volcanic ash, lime, marine sand, and crushed ceramics embedded within sections of the infrastructure. Scientists studying Roman maritime concrete discovered that volcanic reactions between seawater and lime can generate rare minerals such as aluminous tobermarite, a crystal structure that strengthens over time instead of weakening. Modern concrete often begins degrading within 50 to 100 years under severe marine conditions. Some Roman harbour concrete has survived over 2,000 years. Nora appears connected to that same technological tradition. But in some sections, the formulas differ from standard Roman mixtures found elsewhere in the Mediterranean. This raises the possibility that local engineers adapted recipes specifically for Sardinia's coastline and geological environment. Then there is the city's water distribution system. Excavations uncovered underground channels, reservoirs, drainage tunnels, and water routing systems designed with extraordinary precision. Archaeologists measured gradients across certain channels and discovered slope variations so small they remained difficult to reproduce without calibrated surveying tools. Maintaining water flow in ancient cities required exact angles. Too steep an erosion would destroy the channels. Too shallow and stagnant water accumulated. Roman engineers used tools such as chorobates and Groma instruments, but some researchers argue Nora's hydraulic accuracy suggests an even more advanced understanding of terrain management than expected for a relatively distant Mediterranean settlement. The city's ability to distribute fresh water while resisting saltwater intrusion from the nearby coast is especially impressive. Even today, coastal engineers struggle with groundwater salinization in shoreline cities. Nora's Roman theatre presents another unexplained phenomenon. The structure itself is not enormous compared to theatres in Rome or Ephesus, Yet acoustic tests performed at the site demonstrated unusually effective voice amplification. Visitors standing near the centre of the stage can often be heard clearly from the upper seating rows without modern amplification. Acoustic specialists studying ancient theatres discovered that curved seating geometry, reflective limestone surfaces, and specific architectural spacing can naturally enhance vocal frequencies between approximately 500 and 4,000 Hz, the range most important for human speech clarity. But Nora's theatre still performs remarkably well despite centuries of erosion and structural loss from sea winds. Some experts believe ancient architects intentionally shaped theatres to manipulate sound reflection and resonance. Similar theories have been proposed for Epidaurus in Greece, where even whispers can travel extraordinary distances through engineered acoustics. Nora may represent another example of ancient civilizations understanding practical acoustic science far better than traditionally assumed. Beneath the visible ruins lies perhaps the greatest mystery of all. Ground-penetrating radar surveys detected deeper structural layers underneath the Roman city. Archaeologists suspect entire Phoenician districts remain buried below sand and collapsed debris. Some areas may now be permanently underwater. This creates a layered archaeological timeline where multiple civilizations occupied and rebuilt the same coastal space over centuries. Phoenician foundations, Carthaginian modifications, Roman engineering expansions. Each civilization inherited technologies from the previous one while adding its own innovations. Untangling which culture created which system has become incredibly difficult. Nora is less like a single city and more like an evolving technological archive spanning hundreds of years. But nothing at Nora fascinates researchers more than the mosaics. Across villas, baths, and ceremonial structures, archaeologists uncovered floor mosaics whose colours remain astonishingly vivid despite extreme environmental exposure. Deep blacks, reds, whites, and ochreous tones survived humidity, salt crystallization, ultraviolet radiation, biological growth, and temperature fluctuations that normally destroy ancient pigments over time. This should not happen. Salt-rich coastal environments are among the worst possible conditions for preserving ancient artwork. Salt crystals expand within microscopic pores of stone and plaster, gradually breaking apart pigments from the inside. Moisture cycles repeatedly weaken mineral bonds, yet many mosaics at Nora retained sharp visual contrast after nearly 2,000 years near open seawater. Laboratory analysis of several pigment samples revealed unusually stable mineral compositions. Some black pigments may contain manganese-rich compounds with exceptional resistance to oxidation. Red tones appear linked to iron oxide minerals processed under carefully controlled heating conditions. Certain tesserae, small mosaic tiles, were manufactured from volcanic materials with dense crystalline structures that resisted water penetration far better than ordinary limestone. Researchers also found evidence that some mosaic layers may have been sealed using mineral-rich finishing compounds that reduced moisture absorption. If true, the craftsmen of Nora may have understood primitive forms of surface chemistry long before modern material science existed. Comparisons with other Roman sites make the mystery even stranger. At Pompeii, many frescoes deteriorated heavily despite volcanic burial protecting them from weather for centuries. Coastal mosaics in parts of North Africa often lost significant coloration due to salt exposure. Yet sections of Nora's mosaic floors continue to display remarkable preservation even after direct Mediterranean exposure. Some archaeologists believe the answer lies not in one secret technique, but in a combination of factors: volcanic minerals, local Sardinian geology, controlled firing temperatures, advanced lime chemistry, and carefully selected pigments. Others suspect lost regional craftsmanship traditions unique to Sardinia's ancient builders. No consensus exists. Do you think the builders of Nora truly possessed engineering knowledge far ahead of their time? Or are we still missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Facing the Mediterranean Sea near modern-day La Scala in Catalonia, archaeologists uncovered one of the strangest ancient cities ever discovered. Serious excavations at Empúries began in 1908 after local farmers repeatedly uncovered fragments of marble statues, amphorae, coins, and underground walls beneath the sand. What they eventually revealed was extraordinary. One of the only places in the world where an entire Greek city and a Roman city survived side by side in the same location. But the deeper researchers dug, the stranger Empúries became. Beneath its collapsed streets and salt-covered stones were signs of engineering techniques that still confuse modern scientists today. Empúries was originally founded by Greek colonists from Phocia around the 6th century BCE. Centuries later, the Romans transformed it into a major Mediterranean port. Normally, coastal cities exposed to salt water, humidity, storms, and shifting soil decay rapidly over time. Yet large sections of Empúries survived for more than 2,000 years with drainage systems, roads, foundations, and water infrastructure still partially functional. Some engineers now believe the city preserved construction knowledge far more advanced than historians once assumed possible for the ancient world. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding Empúries is its underground drainage network. Archaeologists discovered stone-lined channels running beneath the streets, carefully angled to control water flow across the city. Even more surprising was the durability of the material used inside many of these conduits. Laboratory analysis found evidence of mineral-rich mortar similar to Roman marine concrete, a substance now famous for becoming stronger over time when exposed to seawater. Modern concrete often begins degrading within 50 to 100 years when exposed to saltwater corrosion. Steel reinforcement rusts, cracks form, and structures weaken. Yet Roman harbour structures made with volcanic ash and lime have survived for over 2,000 years. Scientists studying ancient Roman concrete discovered that seawater triggered chemical reactions inside the material, producing rare crystals known as aluminous tobermorite. These crystals slowly reinforced the concrete internally over centuries. At Empúries, similar mineral formations appear to have developed within sections of its drainage infrastructure. This means the city may have used self-strengthening construction materials nearly 2 millennia before modern chemistry understood how such reactions even worked. Researchers from the University of Utah studying Roman concrete found that some ancient mixtures continued crystallizing and hardening for hundreds of years after construction. In other words, parts of Empúries may literally have become stronger with age. The city's roads present another unexplained engineering puzzle. Empúries sits on coastal terrain vulnerable to erosion, flooding, and soil movement. Yet many Roman roads there remained remarkably level despite centuries of environmental stress. Excavations revealed multi-layered construction beneath the streets using large foundation stones, compacted gravel, drainage layers, and slightly curved surfaces designed to move water away from the center. This resembles principles still used in modern civil engineering. Water management is one of the most important factors in preserving roads today. Even small amounts of trapped moisture can destroy asphalt through freeze-thaw cycles and erosion. Ancient engineers at Empúries appear to have understood this intuitively. Some researchers estimate the road foundations distributed weight so effectively that pressure loads were reduced by nearly 30–40% compared to flat-pack stone systems used elsewhere during the same era. What makes this even stranger is comparison with many later medieval roads nearby, which deteriorated much faster despite being built more than 1,000 years later. In some cases, the Roman infrastructure beneath Empúries outlasted structures built during the Renaissance and even the early industrial period. Another mystery involves climate control inside elite Roman homes discovered in the city. Archaeologists found evidence of passive cooling systems integrated directly directly into architectural layouts. Courtyards were aligned to maximize airflow from Mediterranean sea winds, while narrow corridors accelerated air movement through pressure differences. Certain rooms remained significantly cooler than outside temperatures even during peak summer heat. Thermal studies conducted on reconstructed Roman houses suggest some designs could reduce indoor temperatures by as much as 5 to 8 degrees Celsius without mechanical cooling. Modern architects now use similar passive ventilation principles in sustainable building design. Yet emperors achieved this using nothing but geometry, stone, water placement, and natural airflow. Some villas also contained underground cisterns positioned beneath living spaces. Researchers suspect these reservoirs helped regulate interior temperatures through evaporative cooling. Similar principles appear in Persian wind catchers and Middle Eastern passive cooling towers developed centuries later. This raises an uncomfortable historical question. How widespread was ancient environmental engineering knowledge that has since been forgotten? The foundations of Empurias may be even more mysterious. Coastal earthquakes and ground instability have affected the Mediterranean for thousands of years. However, several surviving walls and structures show signs of flexibility rather than rigid construction. Instead of relying entirely on solid mortar bonds, some stone blocks appear intentionally designed to shift slightly under stress. This resembles modern seismic engineering concepts known as flexible load absorption systems. Today, earthquake-resistant buildings often use shock absorption layers or flexible joints to dissipate energy during seismic movement. At Empures, archaeologists identified gravel-filled foundation zones beneath some structures that may have served a similar purpose. The idea that Roman engineers intentionally designed for vibration resistance remains controversial, but evidence from multiple ancient Mediterranean sites suggests they may have understood structural flexibility far better than previously believed. In some regions, Roman buildings survived earthquakes that destroyed later medieval constructions built directly above them. The harbour system of Empures introduces another technological mystery. Ancient ports usually require constant maintenance because waves, currents, and sediment build-up slowly destroy coastal infrastructure. Yet parts of the harbour foundation survived for centuries despite direct exposure to Mediterranean storms. Marine archaeologists studying the coastline found evidence that builders may have carefully selected rock densities and breakwater angles to reduce wave force. Some submerged stone arrangements appear positioned to disrupt incoming currents before they reach critical infrastructure. Modern coastal engineering uses computer simulations to design similar systems today. Researchers comparing Roman ports with modern harbours discovered something remarkable. Several ancient Mediterranean breakwaters performed comparably to 19th century harbour systems, despite lacking modern machinery. This suggests Roman maritime engineering may have relied heavily on generations of observational science accumulated through practical experience. Empures also challenges assumptions about urban planning in the ancient world. The city was divided into highly organized zones, including residential districts, commercial markets, religious centers, industrial workshops, water systems, and transport corridors linked directly to the harbor. Street orientation appears carefully aligned not only for navigation but also for airflow and sunlight control. Some historians argue this level of environmental optimization resembles principles now used in modern sustainable city planning. The Greeks originally designed empires around trade efficiency, while the Romans expanded it using infrastructure-focused planning. The result was a hybrid city combining two advanced engineering traditions into a single functioning system. Few ancient sites preserve this transition so clearly. Do you think ancient civilizations truly understood engineering in ways modern society has forgotten? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Modern-day Aix-en-Provence stands only a short distance from the ruins of Entremont-Oppidum, a massive Celtic Ligurian stronghold built on a limestone plateau overlooking southern France. Constructed more than 2,100 years ago by the Salians tribe, the city should have vanished like countless other Iron Age settlements. Instead, Entremont left behind engineering, metallurgy, and architectural mysteries that archaeologists still struggle to fully explain. The site was first identified in the early 19th century, but major excavations began in the 1940s under French archaeologist Fernand Benoit. Beneath layers of collapsed stone, researchers uncovered fortified walls, organized streets, industrial workshops, carved warrior statues, and one of the strangest ritual systems ever discovered in Celtic Europe. What shocked archaeologists most was not the artwork or weapons, it was the level of technical sophistication hidden inside a society Rome described as barbaric. Entremont's defensive walls were constructed from massive limestone blocks fitted together with surprising precision. Some sections reached nearly 6 meters high and several meters thick. Even after more than 2 millennia of erosion, many parts remained structurally stable. What makes the walls unusual is the geometry. Instead of random stacking, builders angled many stones inward to redirect gravitational pressure through the lower layers. Modern structural engineers compared this to primitive load distribution systems used in later Roman military architecture. Several contact surfaces between blocks show tolerances measured in only a few millimeters. That level of precision is difficult to explain using simple Iron Age chisels and wooden lifting systems alone. Similar polygonal masonry appears at Sacsayhuaman in Peru and at Mycenaean fortresses in Greece. Despite being separated by thousands of kilometers and completely unrelated cultures. Researchers also discovered traces of iron clamps and socket cuts in a few damaged sections. This suggests the Salians may have experimented with reinforcement methods centuries before advanced Roman stone stabilization became widespread. Among the most disturbing discoveries at Entremont were stone pillars carved with cavities designed to hold real human skulls. Archaeologists recovered multiple skull fragments from these niches, many belonging to adult males killed violently. Ancient Greek historian Poseidonius wrote that Celtic tribes in southern Gaul preserved enemy heads using cedar oil and resin. For decades, historians assumed the accounts were exaggerated propaganda, but chemical analysis later detected traces of conifer resin compounds on several skull fragments from the region. This raised a disturbing possibility. The people of Entremont may have understood basic anti-decomposition chemistry. Some scientists believe they used plant oils rich in terpenes, natural compounds capable of slowing bacterial growth. Experiments with cedar resin have shown partial preservation effects under dry airflow conditions. Yet southern France has a Mediterranean climate with seasonal humidity that should accelerate decay. One theory suggests the stone structures themselves acted as passive ventilation chambers. Narrow openings in several walls create wind channels that still produce measurable airflow today. Similar passive air circulation systems were later used in Persian desert storage structures and medieval preservation vaults. Most Iron Age Celtic settlements evolved chaotically over time. Entremont did not. Excavations revealed organized streets intersecting at near right angles, designated workshop districts, residential sectors, drainage systems, and carefully planned defensive choke points. Archaeologists were stunned by the level of urban planning. Stone drainage channels beneath streets were built with calculated gradients, allowing water to flow naturally downhill without stagnation. Modern surveys showed some channels maintain slopes close to 2 to 3%, remarkably efficient for gravity-based drainage. The layout resembles early Roman colonial planning or even parts of Mohenjo-Daro, despite Entremont predating full Roman control in the region. Researchers also discovered evidence that streets may have been intentionally aligned with seasonal sunlight angles. Certain major pathways receive maximum morning illumination during winter solstice periods, improving visibility and thermal warming inside the settlement during colder months. Whether intentional or accidental, the engineering awareness behind the design appears far more advanced than traditional descriptions of Celtic tribal cities. The greatest mystery of Entremont lies inside its industrial quarter. Archaeologists uncovered furnaces, slag deposits, crucibles, tuyères, iron tools, and evidence of large-scale bronze and iron production. At first, this seemed normal for an Iron Age oppidum, but laboratory analysis revealed something unexpected. Microscopic examination of furnace residues showed vitrification patterns requiring temperatures exceeding 1,100 degrees Celsius. Some internal surfaces displayed partial silica melting, suggesting prolonged exposure to extremely intense heat. Reaching those temperatures consistently in the 2nd century BC should have been extraordinarily difficult. Most Celtic furnaces of the period operated between 900 and 1050 degcc. Entremont appears to have exceeded that range. Researchers began investigating how this was possible. One theory focuses on airflow engineering. The industrial zone was strategically positioned along the plateau edge, where strong mistral winds naturally accelerate through narrow limestone corridors. Computer simulations suggest the Salians may have intentionally used these wind tunnels to increase oxygen flow into furnaces. More oxygen means hotter combustion. Experimental archaeologists recreated similar furnace designs using clay chambers and natural wind acceleration. Some tests achieved temperatures approaching 1,200 degrees without advanced bellows systems. This would have allowed Entremont metalworkers to produce harder iron, cleaner bronze alloys, and more durable weaponry than many neighbouring tribes. The slag composition also revealed unusually low impurity levels. Metallurgical analysis detected efficient separation of silicates and excess carbon, indicating controlled smelting rather than crude ore burning. Some iron fragments recovered at the site display carbon distribution patterns surprisingly close to early steel production techniques. Although not true high-grade steel, the material suggests repeated thermal cycling and quenching processes that improved hardness. This places Entremont closer technologically to advanced Mediterranean metallurgical centres than to isolated tribal workshops. Comparisons have been made with the furnaces of Meroe, where ancient engineers also exploited natural airflow to intensify heat. Yet Entremont's climate, materials, and furnace architecture were completely different. Even more puzzling, some furnace stones show thermal stress fractures indicating repeated high-temperature use over decades. This means the process was not experimental. It was industrially sustained. For a society Rome considered technologically inferior, the evidence tells a very different story. Entremont's carved warrior statues remain among the finest examples of pre-Roman Celtic sculpture ever discovered. Several depict seated warriors holding severed heads, while others display highly detailed armor, facial symmetry, and proportional anatomy rarely seen in Iron Age Northern Europe. Art historians noticed mathematical consistency in several statues. Facial spacing ratios and shoulder proportions closely resemble Hellenistic sculptural conventions from the Greek Mediterranean world. This has led to theories that Greek craftsmen, traders, or engineers may have influenced local Salian artisans through nearby colonies such as Massalia. But no direct evidence fully explains how Entremont sculptors achieved such refined precision using limited Iron Age carving tools. Tool marks suggest repeated abrasion polishing using quartz-rich sand mixtures. Under magnification, some surfaces display finishing patterns comparable to later Roman sculptural workshops. Do you think Entremont truly collapsed because of drought and internal decline? Or did Rome deliberately erase a civilization that had become too advanced and dangerous to ignore? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Faleri Novi remained hidden beneath farmland roughly 50 kilometers north of Rome for centuries. Unlike Pompeii, it was not uncovered by volcanic ash or dramatic excavation. In 2020, archaeologists from Cambridge University and Ghent University scanned the buried Roman city using ground-penetrating radar, mapping nearly the entire settlement without digging more than a few centimeters into the soil. The survey covered about 30.5 hectares and revealed streets, temples, bath complexes, markets, water systems, and unknown structures invisible from the surface. What shocked researchers was not just the preservation of the city, but how different it appeared from what historians had believed a standard Roman city should look like. Most Roman cities followed rigid geometric planning. Falerii Novi did not. Beneath the fields lay a city whose engineering seemed unusually experimental, almost as if Roman architects were testing ideas far ahead of their time. Roman urban planning was usually predictable. Cities like Timgad in Algeria or parts of Pompeii followed the classic grid system, straight roads intersecting at right angles with a central forum. Falerii Novi disrupted that assumption completely. Radar images revealed unusually large public buildings positioned asymmetrically, wide corridors connecting separate districts, and ceremonial spaces unlike anything previously identified in Roman municipal design. One massive structure appeared connected directly to a water distribution network rather than to defensive or administrative systems. Another circular building resembled neither a temple nor a theatre. Archaeologists began questioning whether Roman cities were far more regionally customized than historians once believed. This discovery matters because historians have long treated Roman urban planning as standardized engineering exported across the empire. But Falerii Novi suggests local cultures may have influenced Roman design much more deeply. Before Roman conquest in 241 BCE, the region belonged to the Falici civilization. Some researchers believe the strange layout beneath Falerii Novi may represent a fusion of Roman engineering and older Faliscan architectural traditions that survived long after conquest. The city's most mysterious feature may be its hydraulic system. Ground radar revealed a dense network of underground pipes, channels, cisterns, and drainage tunnels spread beneath nearly the entire city. Roman aqueducts are already considered among the greatest engineering achievements of antiquity, but Falerii Novi appears unusually advanced even by Roman standards. Water channels were carefully distributed across elevation changes, so precisely that pressure remained stable throughout different districts. Some pipelines fed directly into residential areas rather than only supplying public baths and fountains. In many ancient cities, private water access was rare and restricted to elites, but evidence here suggests a wider urban distribution system. Even more remarkable is the accuracy of the gradients. Modern engineers studying Roman drainage systems have found slope deviations of only a few centimeters across hundreds of meters. Today, such precision normally requires laser surveying equipment. Roman engineers accomplished it using tools like the chorobates, essentially wooden leveling devices filled with water. Yet the system beneath Falerii Novi still functions in parts after nearly 2,000 years underground. Compared with many modern drainage systems that fail within decades, the survival of these networks has become one of the most uncomfortable comparisons for modern civil engineering. The city walls of Falerii Novi stretch for more than 2 kilometers, and large sections still survive. Their endurance comes from one of the greatest ancient engineering mysteries: Roman concrete. Modern concrete typically deteriorates after exposure to water and chemical erosion. Roman concrete often did the opposite. Scientists studying ancient Roman harbours discovered that volcanic ash mixed with lime created chemical reactions, producing rare crystals called aluminous tobermarite. These crystals strengthen the material over time, especially when exposed to moisture. Falerii Novi used similar volcanic materials from the region surrounding Mount Vesuvius in central Italy. Microscopic analysis of Roman mortar has shown evidence of self-healing reactions in tiny cracks. Water entering fractures could trigger mineral growth that sealed the damage naturally. Modern researchers are now attempting to recreate these reactions to produce sustainable, self-healing concrete. In other words, part of the future of engineering may depend on rediscovering techniques perfected more than 2 millennia ago. Many Roman roads still survive across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. But Faleri Novi demonstrates how sophisticated those roads actually were beneath the surface. Roman roads were not simple stone paths. They often contained multiple engineered layers: compacted earth, gravel foundations, crushed stone, and fitted paving blocks designed to distribute weight evenly and resist flooding. Some routes near Faleri Novi maintained structural integrity despite centuries of earthquakes, erosion, and agricultural activity above them. What remains difficult to explain is how Roman surveyors maintained such straight alignments across uneven terrain without aerial views or satellite mapping. Some roads connected precisely to gates, drainage systems, and surrounding infrastructure with astonishing consistency. Compared with many modern asphalt roads that crack within decades, Roman roads sometimes lasted thousands of years with minimal maintenance. This has led historians to question whether modern construction prioritizes speed and cost over durability in ways ancient engineers did not. The radar scans expose several buildings that do not match known Roman categories. Some appear too large to be private homes, but too unusual to be official civic buildings. One structure contained a series of chambers arranged around a central open area, yet lacked the characteristics of a temple complex. Another included long enclosed passageways leading toward water-connected spaces underground. Because excavation remains limited, researchers still do not know the purpose of many of these constructions. Some theories suggest ritual architecture linked to local cults that survived Roman occupation. Others propose experimental civic spaces or specialized trade facilities. What makes this especially strange is that Roman architecture was usually highly recognizable. The empire favored repetition because standardized construction simplified expansion across vast territories. Yet Faleri Novi contains anomalies that resist classification entirely. The city almost feels like a missing branch of Roman engineering history, one that developed differently and was later forgotten. Unlike Pompeii or Herculaneum, Faleri Novi did not disappear in catastrophe. No volcanic ash buried it. No evidence suggests mass destruction from war. The city simply declined over centuries until it was abandoned during the medieval period. This gradual disappearance is itself mysterious. Faleri Novi occupied a strategically useful position near Roman trade routes and possessed sophisticated infrastructure. Cities with weaker systems survived longer elsewhere in the empire. Some historians suspect shifting trade networks slowly drained its economy. Others believe disease outbreaks or political instability may have reduced the population over generations, yet no single explanation fully accounts for the abandonment of such a technically advanced settlement. Because later civilizations did not heavily rebuild over the site, the city remained frozen underground. It became an archaeological time capsule preserving Roman urban life with extraordinary clarity. Do you think Faleri Novi was simply an advanced Roman city, or evidence that ancient civilizations understood engineering far beyond what history admits? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Southern Tuscany, about 8 kilometers from modern Grosseto, Italy, is home to the ruins of Rucellai, first systematically identified in the 19th century after archaeologists uncovered massive stone walls buried beneath vegetation and farmland. What initially appeared to be ordinary Etruscan ruins quickly became one of the most controversial engineering mysteries in ancient Italy. The deeper excavations went, the stranger Rucellai became. Enormous polygonal walls weighing several tons each surrounded the city for more than 3 kilometers. Underground drainage tunnels still functioned after over 2,500 years. Foundations appeared unusually resistant to seismic activity. Even Roman builders who later occupied the city reused many of the earlier Etruscan structures instead of replacing them. Today, Ruscelli is often compared to ancient megalithic sites such as Sacsayhuaman, Mycenae, and Machu Picchu because of one disturbing question. How could a civilization with relatively primitive tools create structures this advanced so early in history? The most famous mystery of Ruscelli is its gigantic cyclopean wall system. Some sections still stand more than 7 meters high, built from irregular limestone blocks weighing between 5 and 12 tons. Unlike later Roman walls that relied heavily on mortar and standardized bricks, Ruscelli's walls were assembled through polygonal masonry, a technique where stones are cut into irregular geometric forms that lock together almost perfectly. Archaeologists measured gaps between some stones at less than 2 millimeters. Even modern masonry projects using steel tools often struggle to achieve this level of precision on irregular rock surfaces. The question is not simply how the stones were moved, but how they were shaped so accurately without advanced cutting equipment. Researchers believe the walls date primarily to the 6th century BCE, centuries before Roman engineering reached its peak. At that time, iron tools in Etruria were still relatively basic, yet many blocks at Ruscelli show unusually smooth contact surfaces, suggesting abrasion methods more sophisticated than simple hammering. Some engineers comparing Ruscelli to the walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru noticed a similar phenomenon. Interlocking irregular stones distribute force more efficiently during earthquakes. Computer simulations conducted on polygonal masonry structures show they can absorb seismic stress significantly better than rigid rectangular block systems. In some cases, force dispersion improves by over 20% compared to conventional stacked masonry. That may explain why major sections of Ruscelli's walls survived more than 2 millennia of environmental erosion and repeated seismic activity in central Italy. One of the most controversial theories surrounding Ruscelli is that the Etruscans may have understood primitive anti-seismic engineering centuries before Roman architects documented similar principles. The walls do not follow perfectly vertical geometry. Instead, many stones are slightly angled inward, while others create pressure-locking patterns that stabilize neighboring blocks. During earthquakes, rigid walls tend to crack because energy concentrates along straight fracture lines. Polygonal systems behave differently. Stress travels across multiple irregular contact points, reducing catastrophic collapse. Modern Japanese earthquake engineering uses comparable concepts in certain interlocking foundation systems. Although the technologies are entirely different, the structural logic is surprisingly similar. What confuses archaeologists is the apparent consistency of the technique across large sections of Ruscelli. This was not random stacking. It required planning, stone selection, geometric understanding, and extremely accurate shaping. Laser analysis on several blocks revealed cut angles surprisingly consistent across different construction phases. Some researchers speculate that Etruscan builders may have used abrasive sands containing quartz crystals to polish contact surfaces. Quartz ranks 7 on the Mohs hardness scale, harder than many metals available in antiquity. When combined with water and repetitive grinding, it could theoretically produce far smoother cuts than simple chiseling alone. No direct written explanation survives from the Etruscans themselves. Their engineering methods remain largely undocumented, making Ruscelli even more mysterious. Beneath the visible ruins lies another puzzle, an underground hydraulic network designed with remarkable precision. Ruscelli was built on elevated terrain vulnerable to erosion during heavy rainfall. Normally, ancient hillside settlements suffered severe foundation instability over centuries. Yet large parts of Ruscelli remained structurally stable far longer than expected. Excavations uncovered drainage channels carved beneath streets and buildings, carefully angled to guide rainwater away from foundations. In some sections, archaeologists measured gradient variations of only a few centimeters over dozens of meters. That level of hydraulic precision is extraordinary for the ancient world. Even a small error in slope would have caused stagnation or destructive overflow. The Romans later became famous for aqueducts and water management systems, but many historians believe they inherited substantial engineering knowledge from the Etruscans. Rucellai may represent one of the earliest large-scale experiments in urban hydraulic control in Italy. Some channels still drain water effectively today after more than 20,500 years underground. Another mystery involves the unusual preservation of Rucellai's masonry. Limestone normally degrades significantly under long-term exposure to rain, temperature shifts, and biological growth. Tuscany's climate includes moisture fluctuations capable of accelerating stone decay, yet portions of Rucellai's walls remain structurally intact despite over 2 millennia of weather exposure. Some researchers believe the answer lies partly in the precision of the masonry itself. Tight-fitting stones reduce water infiltration, preventing freeze-thaw cracking that destroys many ancient walls. Others suggest the builders deliberately selected unusually dense limestone with low porosity. Microscopic analysis of some surfaces also revealed signs of repeated polishing or finishing that may have reduced weather penetration. Similar preservation mysteries appear at sites like Alatri and Delphi, where polygonal walls survived far better than nearby conventional masonry. The durability becomes even stranger when compared to many medieval structures in the same region that deteriorated much faster despite being built over 1,000 years later. Rucellai later developed into a Roman city, and one of its most famous surviving structures is the theatre constructed partly atop older Etruscan foundations. Acoustic studies conducted in ancient theatres across the Mediterranean repeatedly show unexpectedly advanced sound engineering. Rucellai is no exception. Even with partial claps, voices spoken at normal volume near the stage remain audible from upper seating areas. Researchers studying classical acoustics discovered that the curved seating geometry and limestone surfaces naturally amplify certain speech frequencies between roughly 500 and 2000 Hz, precisely the range most important for human vocal clarity. The slope angle of the theatre also appears carefully optimized. If the incline were too shallow, sound would dissipate. Too steep, and echoes would distort speech intelligibility. Modern theatres often require digital acoustic modelling to achieve similar clarity. Yet ancient engineers managed it using only geometry and material behaviour. Whether this knowledge came from empirical experimentation or deeper mathematical understanding remains unknown. Perhaps the strangest aspect of Rucellai is that Roman builders reused large portions of the earlier Etruscan city rather than demolishing it completely. The Romans were famous for rebuilding conquered cities according to their own urban standards. Yet at Rucellai, they incorporated existing foundations, roads, and defensive structures into later construction phases. This suggests the earlier engineering was already considered highly reliable. Archaeological surveys indicate that some Roman structures were positioned specifically to exploit the stability of older Etruscan foundations. In several locations, Roman walls directly connect into much older polygonal masonry because replacing it would have been less practical than reusing it. That creates a disturbing possibility. Parts of Rucellai's engineering may have surpassed what later Roman builders could easily replicate. Do you think the builders of Rucellai discovered engineering principles that were lost for thousands of years? Share your theory in the comments below. An enormous artificial hill rises above the medieval city of York, England, a mound first constructed by the Normans shortly after 1068. Archaeologists believe the original wooden fortress on the site was ordered by William the Conqueror during the rapid Norman occupation of northern England. After repeated fires and structural failures, the wooden keep was replaced in the 13th century by the massive stone tower that still survives today under King Henry III. Excavations across the mound revealed layers of burned timber, collapsed earthworks, medieval drainage systems, and evidence that the hill itself had been engineered with surprising sophistication. Yet the deeper researchers studied the structure, the stranger it became. Clifford's Tower was not simply another medieval fortress. Many of its engineering choices appear unusually advanced, even when compared with larger castles built centuries later. Most Norman keeps followed simple geometric designs. Castles such as the White Tower in London used square layouts because they were easier to construct and easier to reinforce, while circular towers later became common because they distributed stress more evenly and resisted siege weapons more effectively. Clifford's Tower did neither. Instead, its builders created a rare quatrefoil design, 4 overlapping circular lobes forming a clover-like structure. Very few military buildings in medieval Europe used this layout because it was far more difficult to engineer, and even today historians debate why the designers chose such a strange shape for a defensive tower. Modern structural simulations suggest the design may have unintentionally solved several major engineering problems at once. The curved lobes distribute weight outward instead of concentrating pressure in sharp corners, reducing localized stress fractures compared with square Norman keeps. Some modern engineers comparing medieval fortifications estimate the shape could reduce impact concentration from siege projectiles by more than 20% compared with flat-walled structures of similar thickness. The design also created overlapping defensive sightlines, allowing archers positioned inside the tower to observe nearly every approach angle without exposing themselves as easily as defenders in rectangular keeps. Similar principles would not become common in European military architecture until centuries later, with the star forts of the Renaissance. What makes the mystery even deeper is that medieval builders had no formal understanding of stress analysis, load transfer mathematics, or modern geometry, yet Clifford's Tower behaves like a structure intentionally optimized for them. Some researchers believe the design may represent practical engineering knowledge accumulated through generations of builders rather than theoretical science, while others argue it may simply be a brilliant accident. Either explanation remains unsettling. The tower sits on top of a massive motte, a man-made hill composed of earth, clay, gravel, and compacted debris. Medieval records suggest the mound may originally have risen over 20 meters high and contained tens of thousands of cubic meters of imported soil. Normally, this would be disastrous for heavy stone construction, because artificial earthworks are unstable and settle unevenly over time, especially under concentrated loads. Many Norman Motte and Bailey castles across Europe eventually cracked, tilted, or collapsed entirely because their foundations shifted. Yet Clifford's Tower survived for nearly 800 years. Modern geological studies found evidence that the mound may have been built in carefully layered densities rather than as a simple pile of earth. Some sections appear intentionally compacted differently to absorb movement gradually instead of resisting it rigidly, resembling principles used in modern geotechnical engineering. Researchers also discovered traces of medieval drainage systems running through parts of the hill. Water is one of the greatest threats to earthen foundations because it changes soil density and creates internal movement. But by controlling water flow, the builders may have dramatically slowed structural failure. The mystery becomes even more remarkable when compared with other medieval sites. At locations such as Christchurch Castle and parts of Durham's early Norman fortifications, significant earth movement damaged foundations within centuries, yet Clifford's Tower remained standing through freezes, floods, fires and warfare despite its enormous weight. Some engineers believe the structure survives because the entire mound acts almost like a shock absorber, allowing tiny shifts over time rather than catastrophic cracking. The builders may have accidentally created a primitive form of flexible foundation engineering centuries before the concept formally existed. Before the stone tower existed, earlier wooden fortifications occupied the same hill. Historical records describe repeated fires, including the infamous events of 1190 connected to one of the darkest massacres in medieval English history. After these disasters, Henry III ordered the construction of a new stone fortress around 1245, but the replacement tower contains another mystery. Large portions of its stonework survived weathering far better than expected. Scientists studying the limestone found unusually durable mineral behavior compared with ordinary medieval masonry. The builders used magnesian limestone, a stone rich in magnesium carbonate. When combined with lime mortar, microscopic mineral interactions gradually formed tighter crystalline bonding over centuries. In some samples, researchers observed secondary mineralization, where dissolved compounds slowly recrystallized inside cracks, partially strengthening damaged areas naturally. In simple terms, parts of the tower may have slowly healed themselves over time. This phenomenon resembles limited self-sealing behavior observed in some Roman concrete structures exposed to seawater. While Clifford's tower does not use Roman concrete technology, the comparison shocked researchers because both systems demonstrate unexpected long-term chemical resilience. The tower also endured extreme thermal stress. Northern England experiences constant moisture cycles, winter freezes, and salt crystallization, conditions that normally destroy medieval stone rapidly. Yet portions of Clifford's tower remained structurally stable after nearly 8 centuries. Some sections show erosion rates significantly lower than expected for exposed medieval limestone, and no one fully understands why. The interior arrangement of Clifford's tower may have served more than military defense. Unlike straightforward rectangular keeps, the curved internal geometry creates unusual acoustics. Modern sound experiments inside the surviving chamber revealed that footsteps, voices, and metal impacts echo unpredictably across the circular lobes, meaning attackers entering the tower may have struggled to determine where defenders were positioned. The overlapping chambers also create disorienting visual movement because the walls curve continuously, causing intruders to lose their sense of direction quickly in low-light conditions filled with smoke, shouting, and combat. Military historians compare this effect to later fortress designs intentionally built to confuse attackers during close-quarter assaults. Some believe the structure functioned almost like a medieval psychological weapon. Defenders hidden behind curved corridors could sound far more numerous than they actually were. Echoes amplified movement, and blind corners increased fear. The tower's shape may have created an environment where attackers hesitated, slowed down, and became vulnerable. Whether medieval builders consciously understood these effects remains unknown, but the tower behaves as though they did. By the modern era, Clifford's tower developed severe cracks caused by soil movement, weather expansion, and centuries of structural stress. Some fractures became large enough that engineers feared total collapse, yet the tower never failed completely. The quatrefoil geometry again appears to be the reason. In conventional square towers, stress concentrates at corners and weak points, but Clifford's curved lobes redirect pressure around the structure. When one section weakens, forces disperse into adjacent curves instead of collapsing inward immediately. Modern computer modeling suggests this design unintentionally created remarkable redundancy because damage in one area does not instantly trigger catastrophic failure across the whole tower. This principle resembles aspects of modern earthquake-resistant engineering, where structures are designed to redistribute force dynamically. For a 13th century fortress, the implications are extraordinary, especially because Europe at the time lacked mathematical tools capable of calculating such behaviors precisely. Archaeologists studying Clifford's tower also uncovered evidence of unusually advanced internal planning. The structure included sophisticated drainage channels, elevated access systems, controlled airflow passages, large storage chambers, and latrine systems carefully positioned to reduce contamination. Ventilation appears especially advanced. Airflow studies suggest the curved internal layout naturally circulated air more efficiently than many square keeps, allowing smoke from fires to escape more effectively and reducing suffocation risks during sieges. This resembles passive ventilation concepts used in much later architecture. Some historians compare these systems to engineering solutions found in advanced Crusader fortresses or even certain Roman military structures. Yet Clifford's Tower was built in medieval northern England, not in the Mediterranean world traditionally associated with sophisticated thermal architecture. The question remains unanswered. Where did these builders learn techniques so advanced for their time? Clunia was discovered across the windswept plateau of northern Spain, nearly 1,000 meters above sea level, where Roman ruins emerged from layers of limestone and buried tunnels. Archaeologists first began serious excavations in the early 20th century after scattered inscriptions, collapsed galleries, and enormous carved stone structures were identified beneath farmland near Burgos. What they uncovered shocked historians. Clunia was not a small provincial settlement. At its peak during the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, the city may have supported more than 30,000 inhabitants, making it one of the largest Roman urban centres in Hispania. Yet the region surrounding it had limited natural water sources, harsh winters, and unstable rocky terrain. The existence of a massive city here immediately raised a question that still has no complete answer. How did Roman engineers sustain a metropolis of this scale in such an unforgiving location? The greatest mystery of Clunia lies beneath the surface. Hidden under the city is a gigantic hydraulic network carved directly into limestone bedrock. Massive cisterns, underground reservoirs, drainage shafts, and water tunnels stretch for kilometers beneath the plateau. Modern surveys show that some channels maintain gradients accurate to only a few millimeters per meter, precise enough to keep water flowing continuously without damaging the walls through erosion. For comparison, maintaining stable water gradients is one of the most difficult challenges in pre-industrial engineering. Even slight miscalculations can cause stagnation or destructive flooding. Roman aqueducts like those at Pont du Gard achieved average slopes of around 34 centimeters per kilometer. Some tunnels beneath Clunia appear comparably precise despite being cut through solid underground rock with limited visibility. Researchers remain divided over how Roman surveyors achieved this level of accuracy. Traditional explanations involve water levels, plumb lines, and manual geometry. However, some archaeologists argue that the complexity of Clunia's underground design suggests generations of accumulated engineering knowledge far beyond what most ancient provincial cities should have possessed. Even more mysterious is the city's water storage capacity. Estimates suggest the underground reservoirs could store millions of liters of water simultaneously. In a region vulnerable to seasonal drought, Clunia may have functioned almost like a self-contained survival system capable of resisting long-term sieges or climate instability. Clunia was built atop naturally fractured limestone filled with caves and cavities, but Roman engineers appear to have expanded these spaces into an enormous artificial underground complex. Excavations revealed carved chambers with ventilation shafts, storage areas, hidden corridors, and carefully smoothed ceilings designed to reduce structural collapse. What fascinates modern engineers is the climate stability underground. Temperature readings inside some chambers remain relatively constant throughout the year despite extreme seasonal differences outside. Humidity levels are also surprisingly controlled. This has led researchers to compare Clunia's underground spaces to passive cooling systems found in ancient Persian architecture, particularly the wind-catching ventilation systems used in desert cities thousands of kilometers away. Some theories suggest the underground galleries acted as a thermal regulator for buildings above the surface. Cool air circulating through lower tunnels may have naturally reduced heat during summer while stabilizing temperatures during winter. If true, Clunia may represent one of the earliest large-scale examples of environmental engineering in Roman Europe. ground-penetrating radar studies indicate that much of this subterranean system still remains unexplored. Several anomalies detected beneath the known ruins suggest the existence of deeper chambers that archaeologists have not yet entered. Among the most astonishing structures at Clunia is its enormous Roman theatre, carved directly into the hillside. The theatre could seat approximately 10,000 spectators, making it one of the largest in Roman Spain. But its true mystery is not its size, it is its sound. Modern acoustic measurements show that voices projected from the central stage can still be heard clearly from the upper seating levels without electronic amplification. Researchers studying Roman theatres have long known that curved seating improves sound reflection, yet Clunia appears unusually efficient even compared with famous theatres such as Theatre of Epidaurus. Acoustic engineers believe the limestone composition itself may have contributed to sound filtering. Certain frequencies are naturally absorbed while human speech frequencies are reflected upward through the seating structure. Some studies suggest Roman architects intentionally manipulated angles and stone geometry to maximize vocal clarity. The mystery becomes deeper because no surviving Roman text explains these acoustic techniques in detail. Vitruvius described general architectural principles, but Clunia's theatre performs with a precision that many researchers believe required extensive real-world experimentation rather than simple theoretical knowledge. Another unexplained feature of Clunia involves the durability of its construction materials. The plateau experiences freezing winters, strong winds, and severe seasonal erosion. Over nearly 2,000 years, large portions of walls, drainage systems, and foundations have survived far better than many younger medieval structures nearby. Chemical analysis reveals that Roman builders used mortar mixtures containing lime, volcanic ash, and reactive minerals capable of continuing chemical bonding long after construction. Similar reactions have been identified in Roman marine concrete from ports across the Mediterranean, where mineral growth actually strengthens structures over time. The mystery is geographical. Clunia lies far from major volcanic regions. Transporting large quantities of volcanic material across Roman Spain would have required a sophisticated logistical network involving roads, carts, labourers, and supply coordination on a massive scale. Some researchers estimate that certain Roman construction projects moved thousands of tons of material across hundreds of kilometres. This level of infrastructure management resembles the organisational complexity of early industrial states, more than what many people associate with the ancient world. Several streets and ceremonial structures inside Clunia do not align naturally with the terrain. Instead, their orientation appears connected to solar movement during specific times of the year. During summer solstice sunrise, light can pass through particular corridors and illuminate parts of the city with remarkable precision. This phenomenon has led archaeologists to compare Clunia with sites such as Chaco Canyon and Machu Picchu, where architecture appears intentionally synchronized with celestial cycles. Some historians argue these alignments were symbolic rather than scientific. Others believe Roman engineers integrated astronomy directly into urban planning to reinforce imperial ideology, religious ritual, or seasonal timekeeping. Satellite analysis has also revealed geometric relationships between roads, gates, and elevated structures that may indicate long-distance surveying methods. Achieving such alignment without modern instruments remains one of the enduring puzzles of ancient engineering. Despite more than a century of excavation, large sections of Clunia remain buried. Modern radar scanning has identified rectangular anomalies, deep corridors, and enclosed voids beneath areas that have never been opened. Some underground chambers appear unusually large compared to ordinary Roman storage facilities. Their purpose remains unknown. Speculation ranges from hidden archives and ceremonial chambers to emergency shelters or military infrastructure. What makes Clunia especially mysterious is the absence of detailed written explanations. Roman records mention the city politically, but almost nothing survives describing the advanced underground engineering beneath it. In other words, one of the most technologically sophisticated Roman cities may have left behind almost no surviving technical documentation. That absence creates a disturbing possibility. Some Roman engineering knowledge may have been practical, local, and transmitted directly between specialists rather than systematically recorded. Do you think Clunia was simply an advanced Roman city, or evidence that some ancient engineering knowledge has been completely lost to history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Overlooking the Tyrrhenian coastline in southern Tuscany, around 140 kilometers northwest of Rome, the ancient Roman colony of City of Cosa was founded in 273 BCE after Rome defeated the Etruscans. The modern rediscovery of the site began during the 19th century and intensified through major excavations led by the American Academy in Rome between the 1940s and 1970s. What archaeologists uncovered was not just another Roman military settlement. Beneath collapsed stone and centuries of erosion, they found engineering techniques that still challenge modern researchers today. The city was strategically positioned nearly 113 meters above sea level, allowing full visual control of the surrounding coastline. Yet the greatest shock was not the location itself, but the precision of the construction. Massive polygonal stone walls, advanced drainage systems, astronomical alignments, and unusual building materials suggested that Cosa may have preserved technologies far more sophisticated than expected for a frontier colony over 2,200 years ago. The greatest mystery surrounding Cosa is its enormous defensive wall system. Stretching roughly 1.5 kilometers around the city, the walls were built using giant polygonal sandstone blocks weighing several tons each. Some stones measure over 2 meters in width. Unlike standard Roman masonry, these blocks were fitted together without mortar using irregular multi-sided cuts so precise that even modern tools struggle to reproduce them perfectly. This style is often called Cyclopean masonry, because ancient Greeks believed only mythical Cyclopes could have moved such stones. Similar techniques appear at Sacsayhuaman in Peru and at ancient Italian sites like Alatri, but the exact construction method remains debated. Modern engineers studying polygonal masonry discovered that irregular interlocking stones distribute seismic stress more efficiently than rectangular blocks. In earthquake simulations, polygonal walls absorb lateral movement better because pressure spreads across multiple angles instead of straight fracture lines. This may explain why parts of Cosa's walls still stand after more than 2 millennia of earthquakes, storms, and coastal erosion. The mystery deepens because mainstream Roman engineering usually favored squared stone blocks and concrete construction. Some researchers argue the walls may preserve an older Italic or pre-Roman technology later adopted by Roman builders. Others believe the Romans intentionally used polygonal construction because of the unstable geology near the coast. Either explanation suggests a level of engineering adaptation far beyond what is typically associated with Republican Rome. Cosa's builders appear to have understood structural stability in ways that resemble modern earthquake-resistant architecture. Geological surveys show that the city was carefully positioned on highly stable bedrock, while vulnerable slopes were reinforced with angled, retaining structures. The walls themselves lean slightly inward, creating a gravity-locking effect that increases resistance against collapse. This design is remarkably similar to modern passive seismic engineering principles. Today, earthquake-resistant structures often rely on force distribution, flexible load transfer, and gravity stabilization. Cosa seems to achieve several of these effects without steel reinforcement, advanced mathematics, or computerized analysis. Researchers comparing ancient seismic techniques found that polygonal walls can survive repeated tremors because the stones shift microscopically during earthquakes instead of cracking apart. This phenomenon has also been observed in Inca sites in Peru, where walls endured major seismic events that destroyed nearby colonial buildings centuries later. The survival of Kosa's defences is especially impressive considering the harsh marine environment. Salt-laden winds continuously erode exposed surfaces, yet many wall sections remain structurally intact. In some places, erosion patterns suggest the stones may have been selected specifically for mineral density and weather resistance. One of the least understood aspects of Kosa is its hydraulic infrastructure. The city sits on elevated terrain with limited natural freshwater access, yet excavations revealed an advanced network of underground cisterns, channels, reservoirs, and drainage tunnels. Roman engineers understood gravity-fed water systems extremely well, but Kosa demonstrates an unusual level of precision. Some underground channels maintain gradients of only a few degrees over long distances. If the angle were too steep, erosion would destroy the system. If too shallow, water flow would stop entirely. Researchers have compared the hydraulic accuracy of Kosa to famous Roman aqueduct systems such as Pont du Gard. The difference is that Kosa achieves similar efficiency on a difficult hilltop environment rather than across open terrain. The drainage system may also have served defensive purposes. Certain underground passages appear designed to rapidly redirect stormwater away from vulnerable structures during heavy Mediterranean rains. Some archaeologists even speculate that parts of the tunnel system could have doubled as emergency escape routes or protected storage chambers during sieges. Even more surprising, portions of the water infrastructure continued functioning long after the city declined. Archaeologists observed that several cisterns still effectively collect and channel rainwater today, demonstrating how durable the engineering truly was. Another unresolved mystery involves the orientation of Kosa's streets and temples. Studies of the urban grid suggest that parts of the city may align with solar events, particularly during solstices. At certain times of the year, sunlight enters temple areas at unusually precise angles. This is not entirely unique in ancient architecture. Egyptian temples at Abu Simbel and Maya, structures at Chichen Itza, famously incorporate astronomical alignments. However, Kosa was primarily a military colony rather than a ceremonial religious capital, making the precision harder to explain. The city's highest district, known as the Arcs, appears particularly important. Archaeologists believe its temples may have been positioned to track seasonal solar movements connected to agricultural or ritual calendars. Some alignments are accurate enough that researchers suspect deliberate astronomical planning rather than coincidence. Ancient Roman surveying techniques relied on instruments like the chroma for straight-line measurements, but achieving long-range solar alignment across uneven terrain required careful observation and mathematical understanding. The exact surveying methods used at Kosa remain uncertain. One of the most haunting discoveries at Kosa came from a structure archaeologists named the House of Skeletons. Inside, multiple human remains were found lying where the occupants apparently died. Unlike battlefields filled with weapon damage, the scene suggested a quieter and more mysterious collapse. No evidence indicates a major invasion destroyed the city. Historical records mention periods of piracy, political instability, and economic decline, but none fully explain the sudden abandonment patterns discovered in some districts. Some scholars believe disease outbreaks may have devastated the population. Others argue shifting Mediterranean trade routes slowly strangled the colony economically until residents abandoned it. Yet the skeletal remains imply at least part of the population may have been trapped during a sudden crisis. The mystery is intensified by the contrast between the city's durable infrastructure and its social disappearance. The engineering survived far longer than the civilization that maintained it. Kosa also preserves evidence of unusually durable Roman concrete and mortar mixtures. Laboratory analysis identified volcanic ash and pozzolanic compounds similar to those used in Roman harbour construction. When volcanic ash reacts with seawater and lime, it forms rare crystalline minerals that strengthen over time instead of weakening. Modern concrete typically degrades within 50 to 100 years under severe marine conditions. Some Roman marine structures have survived for over 2,000 years. Cossa appears to contain optimized versions of these mixtures adapted specifically for coastal weather exposure. Microscopic studies revealed mineral growth patterns inside the concrete that continue sealing internal fractures naturally. In other words, parts of the material may possess a primitive self-healing capability. This phenomenon has become a major area of modern engineering research because scientists hope to recreate similar, long-lasting, sustainable concrete today. The fact that ancient builders achieved such durability without industrial chemistry remains one of the greatest engineering mysteries of the ancient world. Few places in Roman Europe are as strange as the buried remains of Aventicum, the Roman city now known as Avenches, hidden beneath farmland and scattered medieval ruins in modern Switzerland. Archaeologists first began identifying the site systematically during the 18th and 19th centuries after massive stone walls, underground foundations, coins, mosaics, and fragments of Roman engineering repeatedly surfaced from the soil. What they eventually revealed was shocking. A city that may once have housed more than 20,000 inhabitants in a region considered too cold, too wet, and too unstable for large-scale Roman urban expansion. Yet Aventicum was not only built there, it thrived there, and many of its engineering methods still raise uncomfortable questions about how advanced Roman practical science may actually have been. Unlike Pompeii, which was frozen instantly by volcanic ash, Aventicum survived centuries of freezing winters, shifting groundwater, and alpine climate cycles. That alone should have destroyed most ancient masonry long ago. Modern concrete exposed to repeated freeze-thaw expansion often begins degrading within decades unless protected with advanced additives. Yet some Roman foundations in Aventicum remain structurally coherent after nearly 2,000 years. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding Aventicum is its water management system. Excavations uncovered underground channels, lead piping, stone-lined conduits, pressure-regulating reservoirs and drainage systems extending beneath major districts of the city. Roman engineers are already famous for aqueducts, but Aventicum presents a far more difficult environment than southern Italy. Water pressure changes dramatically in alpine terrain, and freezing temperatures can rupture pipes with enormous force. Despite this, many channels were constructed with gradients so precise that modern surveys found deviations of only a few centimeters across long distances. That level of precision becomes difficult to explain when considering Roman surveying equipment. The Romans used tools such as the chorobates and groma for alignment, but maintaining hydraulic efficiency across kilometers without modern laser measurement would have required extraordinary calibration. Even small miscalculations would have caused sediment buildup, pressure instability, or destructive overflow. Some archaeologists believe Aventicum may have used primitive hydraulic balancing systems similar in principle to modern surge regulation. Several buried basins appear positioned specifically to stabilize flow rates between elevation changes. If true, this would mean Roman engineers understood practical fluid dynamics far beyond what is traditionally attributed to the ancient world. The mystery deepens with the city's drainage infrastructure. Ground-penetrating radar surveys revealed networks of subterranean runoff tunnels designed to redirect excess groundwater away from public structures. Similar concepts are used in modern urban flood control systems. In some sectors, drainage layers beneath roads and buildings resemble contemporary geotechnical stabilization methods. This becomes even stranger when compared with many medieval European cities built more than 1,000 years later. Medieval settlements often suffered catastrophic sanitation failures, flooded streets, and unstable foundations. Yet Aventicum appears to have implemented integrated drainage engineering centuries earlier. Another unresolved mystery involves the material composition of the city's mortar and foundations. Chemical analysis of surviving masonry revealed unusually durable lime-based mixtures containing crushed stone aggregates and mineral compounds that appear optimized for moisture resistance. Researchers comparing samples to Roman marine concrete from ports near Naples found surprising similarities in crystal formation. Modern studies of Roman concrete have shown that some ancient mixtures develop self-healing properties through the formation of calcium-aluminum silicate crystals when exposed to water. Microscopic cracks can partially reseal themselves over time. In modern infrastructure, self-healing concrete is considered cutting-edge experimental technology. Yet, traces of similar reactions appear inside Aventicum's foundations. What makes this difficult to explain is geography. Southern Roman concrete often relied on volcanic ash known as pozzolana, sourced primarily from regions near Vesuvius. Aventicum lies hundreds of kilometers away in Switzerland. Either massive quantities of specialized material were transported through Roman trade systems across mountainous terrain, or local engineers developed alternative formulations independently. Transport itself becomes another mystery. Aventicum's largest stones weigh several tons. Moving them through alpine regions without modern cranes or engines would have required coordinated logistics on a scale many historians underestimate. Roman transport calculations suggest that hauling stones of this size over wet terrain would have demanded hundreds of laborers, reinforced sled systems, and carefully engineered roadbeds. Those roads still survive. Roman roads around Aventicum continue to puzzle engineers because of their structural resilience. Beneath the visible paving stones, excavations revealed multiple compacted layers of rock, gravel, sand, and drainage material, arranged with remarkable sophistication. The deeper layers acted almost like shock absorbers, redistributing pressure and reducing water retention. Modern civil engineering uses similar multi-layer road foundations to combat frost heave, a destructive process in which freezing groundwater expands beneath roads and fractures the surface. In Switzerland's climate, frost heave can destroy asphalt highways within years if improperly engineered. Yet portions of Aventicum's roads remained stable for centuries. Some sections even contain side drainage channels buried beneath the roadway itself. These systems prevented water accumulation below the foundation, reducing freeze damage. It is an engineering strategy still used in modern, cold region infrastructure projects today. The city's amphitheatre presents another mystery: acoustics. Aventicum Amphitheatre was constructed with seating geometry that allows voices and sound waves to travel efficiently from the arena floor to upper seating rows without amplification. Acoustic tests conducted in surviving Roman theatres across Europe consistently demonstrate sophisticated sound behaviour. But Aventicum's design is particularly unusual because of the surrounding terrain and wind exposure. Researchers studying Roman acoustics discovered that curved stone surfaces and seating angles can naturally amplify frequencies associated with human speech. But achieving this effect consistently required empirical understanding of reflection, resonance, and spatial geometry centuries before formal acoustic science existed. Some historians argue Roman architects learned these principles gradually through experimentation. Others believe their understanding of sound propagation may have been far more mathematically advanced than surviving texts suggest. The city's heating systems also remain astonishing. Excavations uncovered hypocaust technology beneath villas and bathhouses, an underfloor heating network where hot air circulated through hollow chambers beneath stone floors and wall cavities. Similar systems would not become common in Europe again until many centuries later. What surprises modern engineers is the efficiency. Some reconstructed models indicate indoor temperatures may have remained relatively stable despite harsh winters outside. Certain homes even appear to incorporate double-wall insulation principles that reduced heat loss while limiting internal moisture buildup. That combination of thermal management, drainage engineering, and structural stabilization creates an uncomfortable comparison with later European history. In many ways, Aventicum appears technologically ahead of numerous medieval cities built long after Rome collapsed, and yet much of the city still remains underground. Radar imaging suggests large sectors of Aventicum have never been excavated. Buried foundations, unknown chambers and unexplored infrastructure continue beneath modern fields surrounding Avenches. Archaeologists believe only a fraction of the ancient capital has been fully studied. Some subterranean anomalies detected beneath the city do not yet match known Roman layouts. There are indications of unusually deep foundations and possible industrial sectors hidden beneath later sediment layers. If future excavations confirm large-scale manufacturing zones, Aventicum may force historians to reconsider how industrialized some Roman provincial cities truly became. Rocapertis was discovered near the village of Velo in southern France, roughly 25 kilometers northwest of Marseille. Archaeologists initially believed the site was nothing more than a small Celtic sanctuary dating to the 3rd century BCE. But as excavations expanded during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, researchers uncovered something deeply unusual: precision-carved stone pillars, engineered ceremonial platforms, and sculptures that seemed technologically out of place for Iron Age Gaul. The deeper archaeologists dug, the stranger the site became. Rocapertis did not resemble a primitive tribal settlement. Instead, parts of it appeared closer to Mediterranean ceremonial architecture seen in Greek colonies along the coast. Even today, historians still debate whether the builders were purely Celtic, heavily influenced by Greek engineers, or part of a hybrid culture that modern history barely understands. The most infamous structures at Rocapertis are the stone pillars carved with oval niches believed to hold real human skulls after ritual ceremonies. Ancient Greek writers described Celtic head cults in Gaul, but Rocapertis is one of the few places where physical architectural evidence appears to support those accounts. What shocked archaeologists was not the ritual itself, but the precision of the carving. The niches were not randomly cut. Many are nearly identical in diameter and depth, suggesting standardized measurements. Several openings vary by less than a few millimeters despite being carved into limestone more than 2,200 years ago. Experimental archaeologists attempting to recreate the cuts using replica Iron Age tools discovered that maintaining such symmetry without fracturing the stone requires remarkable control and repeated measurement. Some researchers compared the craftsmanship to early Hellenistic masonry techniques found in Greek colonies around Massalia, modern Marseille. That comparison created a major controversy. Traditional history often portrays Celtic tribes of southern Gaul as fierce warriors with limited architectural sophistication, yet Rocapertis demonstrates a level of stoneworking far beyond that stereotype. Even stranger, the pillars appear engineered to distribute weight evenly despite having multiple hollow cavities carved into their cores. Modern structural analysis suggests the builders intentionally avoided cutting into key stress zones that could cause cracking. That implies an intuitive understanding of load distribution centuries before Roman engineering dominated the region. Among the most mysterious discoveries were several carved stone heads and seated warrior figures. Unlike the rough tribal carvings commonly associated with Iron Age Europe, these sculptures display surprisingly advanced proportions and controlled detailing. Hair patterns were carved using parallel grooves of nearly consistent spacing. Facial features show evidence of planned symmetry. Some eye sockets were drilled to almost equal depth, something extremely difficult using basic hand tools on fragile limestone. Under magnification, archaeologists identified repetitive chisel patterns suggesting specialized metal tools rather than crude stone instruments. The question became unavoidable. Where did this level of craftsmanship come from? One theory proposes direct contact with Greek artisans from nearby Mediterranean colonies. Marseille, founded by Greek settlers around 600 BCE, became one of the largest trade hubs in Western Europe. Greek ceramics and imported goods have been found throughout southern Gaul. Some historians believe Roquepertusa may represent a fusion between Celtic spiritual traditions and Mediterranean engineering knowledge. But there is a problem with that explanation. Even Greek-influenced settlements in the region rarely produce ceremonial sculptures with the same abstract yet technically disciplined style seen at Roquepertusa. The site appears culturally unique, neither fully Celtic nor fully Mediterranean. That ambiguity has fueled decades of debate. Southern France experiences violent seasonal weather changes. The Mistral wind can exceed 90 kilometers per hour, carrying dry air capable of accelerating limestone erosion. Over 2 millennia, exposed carvings should have degraded far more severely than what archaeologists see today. Yet many surfaces at Roquepertus remain unexpectedly sharp. Microscopic analysis revealed that portions of the stone may have undergone surface hardening. Some researchers suspect the limestone was treated with mineral-rich coatings or exposed to repeated heating processes that altered the outer crystalline structure. Others argue the preservation is simply geological luck, but comparisons with nearby Iron Age sites raise difficult questions. At many contemporary Celtic settlements across France and Central Europe, decorative carvings have eroded almost beyond recognition. Roquepertus, despite centuries of exposure, preserves structural edges and facial details at a much higher rate. If the builders understood methods for improving stone durability, that knowledge has been completely lost. One of the most debated elements of Roquepertus is its ceremonial gateway, a structure composed of heavy horizontal lintels supported by vertical pillars on unstable terrain. Modern reconstructions estimate some stone components weighed several tons, yet the sanctuary was built on uneven limestone foundations vulnerable to shifting and seasonal stress fractures. Normally, structures of this kind collapse quickly without advanced stabilization techniques, but Roquepertus survived for centuries before eventual destruction, likely during Roman expansion into southern Gaul around the 2nd century BCE. Engineers studying the ruins noticed something remarkable. The builders appear to have positioned the heaviest loads directly above naturally reinforced rock zones beneath the sanctuary. The arrangement reduced lateral pressure and distributed force vertically into the bedrock. This was not random construction. It suggests the builders understood principles of balance and compression at a surprisingly advanced level. Similar load management strategies would later appear in Roman arches and Greek ceremonial gateways, yet Roquepertus predates many comparable Western European examples. Some historians now argue that Iron Age Celtic engineering has been dramatically underestimated. Another mystery involves the orientation of the sanctuary itself. Several archaeologists observed that parts of the structure align unusually well with the summer solstice sunrise. During certain periods of the year, sunlight may have passed directly through ceremonial openings and illuminated central ritual areas. If intentional, this would place Roquepertusa among a global pattern of ancient ritual sites linked to astronomy, including Stonehenge in Britain, Nabta Playa in Egypt, and multiple Greek temple complexes aligned to solar events. However, proving astronomical intent is extremely difficult because much of Roquepertus was destroyed long ago. The surviving ruins are incomplete, leaving researchers divided. Still, the possibility remains unsettling. If Celtic builders in southern Gaul incorporated astronomical calculations into ritual architecture, their scientific understanding may have been far more sophisticated than ancient Roman writers ever acknowledged. Do you think Roquepertusa was simply a Celtic sanctuary, or evidence of a forgotten civilization far more advanced than history admits? Share your thoughts in the comments below.